Welcome to the Foul Play YouTube channel. Open mic number 139. Hope everyone's doing great today. Wherever you are in the world, early morning like in Australia, or here mid-afternoon in the States, or later like for Alice and our European friends. So we're going to jump back into some depositions. I'm guessing we'll probably only get through one because this first one is 107 pages total, so probably about 100 pages plus the index. Pretty sure that this guy is a former detective. This Kolanczyk, I think, is the first one we're doing, Allan Kolanczyk, and we've read pieces of this before on the Crime Theory Exchange with Sunshine Christina in connection with some other things that we were doing that day on that podcast. It was really towards what Jean Cachet had done. But anyway, let's let everyone say hello, and then we'll say hello to everyone in the live chat, and then I got a brief thing to talk about, and then we'll get rolling. I promise I will not take long. So first up, we have Alice.
Panel, great to be back on panel tonight. Hi to everyone in chat. I'll only be on for a wee while tonight. I've got an early appointment in the morning, so I'll stay as long as I can and help out as much as I can. And it's great to see everyone.
Thanks so much, Alice. And then Cherie, I don't recall.
Greetings, everybody, and welcome to Open Mic.
And then just Rhonda.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be back again and see what kind of interesting information we come up with this deposition.
Yeah, there's some interesting things in actually the next few depositions with these former detectives, former cops for Manitowoc. So yeah, we'll get to it. I did want to say a brief word about convicting. I'm sure we've talked about it a little bit yesterday, and we talked about it, of course, Friday night. We did a quick live about it, and then as time has went on, it's kind of blown up even more. I really haven't looked on Facebook that much, but Twitter is lit up pretty hard. A lot of different people commenting, Sapper, Nosy. There's just all kinds of people. Emerging Truth. If you go to Twitter and yeah, you're part of that world, you'll see it if you just do just a brief look. And I think that rightfully so, because making a murder took such a beating from various guilters that your king guilter, Mr. Kratz, saying, "Oh well, all this shit that making a murder left out." Well, I'm here to tell you, I've looked at this case for, as I say, I'm 7.5 years in. There's nothing relevant that was left out as far as evidence against Avery. There was a lot of shit relevant for his innocence left out. I can tell you that for a damn fact. And I suspect that's not going to get showed in convicting. It wasn't shown in Mam, but there's a lot of supporting evidence, and it's not circumstantial. It's voice, it's audio, it's written that completely just decimates what Kratz and Fallon and Gaunt presented. But it wasn't really ever picked up and explained by their lawyers, so I'm sure we're not going to see that in convicting either. It's going to be, Richard Boyd did a pretty quick little video, I think earlier today, and one of the things he said that I feel he's absolutely correct on. This is going to be a 10-part character assassination of Avery, whether people believe that or not, but I do. I think they're going to go back as far as they can go back in Avery's life to he's 18 years old, and some of the stupid shit that he did when he was younger. Burglaries and just dumb shit that he shouldn't have done. He should have known better, but hey, he paid the price for everything that he did. So anyway, I just wanted to
more, Jack.
I'm sorry.
He paid the price and more.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the 12 extra years he served, at least 12, but probably more than that, for the wrongful conviction of Penny Bernstein um, in
I
connection with
mean,
the Sandra Morrison incident. Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, not only that, Jack, people forget Stephen had babies when this was happening. You know what I mean? So it's not only Stephen's life they've destroyed with doing this. It's the twinsies' life and his marriage and
And his
everything
daughter.
like that.
And his daughter.
His daughter, yeah, all went to shit because these people couldn't handle a cocky wee bastard who thought he was gallus and didn't need to follow the rules and things like that. I mean, we've always said he's no saint, Jack. You know what I mean? But he does not deserve to have done to him what was done to him. You know what I mean? Period.
His family didn't either.
Yeah, exactly. And what you're saying about convicting and Twitter, yeah, I've seen it. Twitter's on fire now. With all the comments and everything like that. I mean, I think even Ripper put out a comment as well, and I'd seen that Jerry had replied to your message, Jack, that you put out about convicting getting ripped to, getting pulled apart, and Jerry replying back to you, I'm sure yous will pull it apart. Of course we're going to pull it apart. You know what I mean? We've done it. We've done it with Ma'am, so we're certainly going to do it with this as well. And I'm no pleased because by what I've seen of the host, what's her name, Owens or something like that.
Candace Owens.
Well, I've not got a clue who she is, who she works for, what she does normally, but right away I don't like her. I've seen a clip of her commenting on Ma'am, and the first thing that comes out of her mouth is that Stephen's first sentence was for murder. It's like, no, if you're going to be putting out a show that's supposed to be rebutting it, get your facts right, missus. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 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 And that's I'd actually replied to someone just a few minutes ago on Twitter that, you think about a host, somebody that gets brought in like this. She's a big name. She's got a pretty big following in whatever arena that she's in. I don't really follow her at all. She's more the right side of the aisle, politically speaking, and that's fine. That she can do whatever she wants. But when you just this has been kind of a problem it has been for a long time. But Ken Kratz is kind of this a poster child for this kind of thing. Just because you say something doesn't mean it's true. So my suspicion is she was handed a script. She doesn't know the cases. She doesn't care. As long as the checks don't bounce, she don't give a shit. She does not care. She's going to repeat what's on that script and record it and boom and move on. Move on to the bank. That's my fault feeling.
Is she another Nancy Grace or Nancy Disgrace, I should say?
No, I don't think her background is legal like Nasty Disgrace. At least Disgrace had. She was a former prosecutor, so she knows the legal system. At least she should, and she used that to great effect in getting herself established. Nancy Disgrace got in quite a bit of trouble. It's really I think one of the big reasons that she left the legal profession, because she pulled some really shady. She tried to pull some really shady stuff in a district court or maybe even a federal court. I don't remember. And she got caught. She got called out, and she got her ass handed to her. So no, I don't think Candace has any kind of legal background, but I'm not positive about that. But I don't think she does. I think she's more of a host, firebrand kind of thing that has gained a following and has associated herself with this organization that picked up convicting. I mean, I think this is, well, it is what it is. But yeah, we're definitely gonna to do a case study on it because again, ma'am took such a beating from these guilters about what they was left out and this, that, and other thing. Even I still have arguments with people about Colburn's lawsuit and what was said in trial and what was put off in ma'am, and nothing that was put in ma'am changed anything about that exchange. Nothing. Everything was conveyed. They proved that in court. And I don't know how there could be even a question about it. But again, I think that was a test case. If it had been successful, I think there would have been a line out the door for various people in that documentary, and probably other documentaries to line up out there and say, "Oh, you defamed me. You said something, blah blah blah." Well, or you didn't play the entire thing, and it's just no documentaries like that. I don't know of one that's like that. Even just think about the Depp and Heard trial. Even that was broadcast live, but there are things we didn't get to hear because it's just the way it is. When they had sidebars and other various things, the whatever network they would mute those microphones, so we didn't get to hear that. There's only, unless you're live right there on scene in this medium that we have, television, even this podcast or any other, there's always a little bit of disconnect that you're going to have, and that's just life. You have to accept that. So this lawsuit was just, and their lawyers. Anyway, I'm not going to get off into all that. Alice, if you would, that's not all I'm going to say about that. If anybody has any comments, please put them in the live chat. We'll try to address it. But Alice, if you would, can you go through the live chatters and say hello for us?
I sure
Oh my God,
can.
it's working.
Hi,
Looky's
Susan.
there. Susan unbroke her internet. Woo!
Woohoo!
Man. Well, how are you, Susan? How are you?
Oh, I'm
Better
going
now?
crazy without internet or phone. It's just
Okay.
been awful.
I bet. Well, that's
I've
great.
been reading. Yeah.
That's great. All righty. Well, you're here almost just in time. We've not quite got started reading yet, but we will here shortly. So, yeah,
Okay.
Alice, if you would say hello to everyone for us.
But you sure will. We've got JD. Hey, JD. We've got Rhonda SD. We've got the lovely Dark Side. We have Nan's Life. We have Angie Dickinson. Hello there. We've got Gloria. We've got Pete Moss. Hi, Pete Moss. Rhonda's in chat. We've got Colette M. Hi, Colette M. Lovely to see you. We've got Andy B. We've got Mystic Jinx peeks in. Hey, Jinxie. We've got Ian Rose. We have, who else do we have? We've got Brother Yores is there. Hi, Yores. Nice to see you in chat. We have Ronica. Hi, Ronica. Nice to see you. JD, we've got Behind the Magic. Hi, Behind the Magic. Lovely to see you. Nan's Life 7. Ronica got Ronica. Ronica says, I wish one of you on the panel was the narrator for convicting. That would be funny.
How nice. What a wonderful comment. Thank you.
We've got
I could do it. I could do it.
Pick me.
We've got our lovely supermod Catnet. Hello, lovely Catnet. Great to see you. Susan's in chat. We've got Ronald. We've got Disco Pervert. Hey, Disco. We've got Sheila Smokey. And that's it for now. If I have missed you, I do apologise. Pop a wee hello again, and we'll get you on the next wee break or chat that we have. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you so much, Alice. Yeah, appreciate that. And yeah, so glad you could make it, Susan, because
Oh, me too, Jack.
well, yeah, I put the two files that I like I said earlier. I think we're probably gonna get through one of them because it's over 100 pages. So
Oh, wow.
I'm doubting we'll get to the second one. And the second one's Leo Jadowski. Both these are August 5th, So we did everything from August 4th
Yep.
is complete. Well, these from August 5th, and Allan Kolanczyk was first. Anyway, I want to keep everyone here all night, but these depositions are something I definitely want to get through. And for those that are following, and for it's for understanding what they did and what they didn't do. And this again goes directly back to Gregory Allan. And by this time, Gregory Allan had his DNA taken for that cold case file in Wisconsin, Hennepin County, Wisconsin, in the 1991 attack that he did on that woman. He beat the hell out of her, and he sexually assaulted her. So there had to be some real fear that the state of Wisconsin had that Glenn and Kelly would find out about this. Clearly, they didn't, because I think if they did, it would have blown everything sky. I'm sure of it. It would have blown up in their face. So it was
Yeah.
dirty. It was really dirty what they did. They kept that shit buried for 27 months until after Avery and Brendan were sentenced before they served that warrant on Gregory Allan to arrest him. They had already served the DNA warrant. I'm sorry, to be clear. That got served in June of 2005. And then the arrest warrant was written in September and signed. And it sat there for 27 months before it was served on him. And there's nothing right about that. Nothing. You can't justify it in any shape, form, or fashion. In my mind, you can't. I'm talking about the reasonable law firm of Big Jeff, Jack, and a few others that formed our I'm Not a Lawyer law firm. How can they do that and say that they're good and decent men? Full of bullshit. You're not either. No, you're not. So anyway, let's before I get really pissed off.
I have to agree with that, Jack.
I got to stop talking about it. I'm going to get so damn mad I won't be able to talk. Okay, let me get this first one pulled up here. Yeah, this one starts at 9:37. Just one second. I've tried to fix the scaling so it pretty much fills the screen because this computer's scaling is a little bit different. It's pretty close.
Hello to Cher. Cher has joined us in chat. Hi, Cher. Lovely to see you, my dear.
Yep, thanks for coming, Cher. Thanks to everyone coming. These depositions, they're not going to set the world on fire, but they do tell their own story about what the state of Wisconsin, again, did and didn't do, and their goal into keeping everything that they knew about, at least for some of these witnesses. There are a few of these witnesses that were pretty bold, and they didn't hold back. But you could tell a lot of these other ones had been coached to the point that, they either agreed to testify a certain way or they were afraid to say more. It was one of the two. And I'm sure that several of them knew more than what they said. So, anyway. Yeah, this first one, Allan Kolanczyk, 9:37 to 11:27, 97 minutes. We'll scroll through here and we'll get some parts assigned. My lovely ladies here will always help me read. We'll look through the lawyers right quick and who was present. Of course, Glenn and Kelly. I'm sorry, Kelly and Glenn. Mr. Covelli and Mr. Bascom. I'll take those two parts. And then Doyle and Mayor. Cherie, can you take those two?
Doyle and Mayor?
Yes.
Oh, Doyle and Mayor? Okay.
Doyle
Yep.
and Mayor. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then we can see, look who's present here today. Not only Steve and Jody. Now, Jody, remember, Jody's going to be reporting to jail on the 15th, so she's about done with her ability to attend. Then we have Mr. Ex-Sheriff himself, former Sheriff Thomas Kolanczyk, because again, I'm 99% sure I haven't read this one in a while, and when I had this picked out here several weeks ago, we got off into the dispatch calls, which we are gonna continue those, but I just did a brief scan. I'm pretty sure this guy was a former detective.
It seems really strange to me that Kolanczyk is there.
Well, this guy being a former detective in his department under his tutelage, I am a little shocked, but I'm not. I wish we had these exhibits, Exhibit 92, the DOJ report on Kolanczyk. We may have a piece of that because I don't know if you guys remember, but there are a number of these DOJ reports that were attached to the Colburn v. Netflix lawsuit. Not all of them, but there are some, and I need to get that exhibit because it's a really long one. I need to break out each one of those exhibits or these statements from the DOJ and make them their own PDF file. It's a project that I know has been sitting there, and I just, because it's going to be a pain in the ass, I just haven't done it yet. But I'm pretty sure that we have this one, but it's buried. But I could be wrong. I could be misremembering. But we do have a number of them.
Are we going to get anything from the Colburn lawsuit?
I don't know, Still waiting on, I'm sure Cherie would get a notification if something changed about those
Right?
exhibits that were sealed.
Uh-huh.
You would get a notification. Well,
None so far.
but I
I'll
mean,
keep checking. Go ahead.
but I mean, if let's just say, an exhibit, something's been filed and it's partially sealed, and then that status changes, you'll get a notification of the status change, or yes or no?
I would think so, but I don't know. Somebody like Travis would be better for that because I don't have experience with that yet.
Well, Travis said that you would get a notification of that
Okay.
because I asked him about it.
Yeah. Remember that.
So we'll see.
I'll tell you something, it seems to me like anytime we got anything, because I have notifications for anything in his Daniel's civil suit, and anytime there was anything, whether it was just to prove something or deny a request or whatever, there was a notification for it. At least that I seem to remember it that way.
Yeah.
Anything that gets changed or filed or approved or denied, I remember, I think, getting notifications for it.
Yeah.
But
I think so too. Well, we'll see. Hopefully we will. I'm hoping that the text messages will be unsealed. I'm hoping some of the other information will be unsealed because it was,
that'll be lots of
well,
fun.
it was part of the destruction of that case. When you open when a lawyer opens himself up to the attorney-client privilege thing, and it destroyed that case. To me, it's just like, oh my God, why did you guys do that? Anyway.
Yeah.
All right. So.
Well, I think they were just their arrogance outshone. They believed they were they just thought they thought they were going to win. I think they really believed they were going to win.
So yeah,
and so they didn't.
I'm right there with you. All right. So we're gonna have Glenn and Mr. Kolanczyk here. So, Susan, would you read the part of the lawyer? Would you read Glenn the questions, and Rhonda, can you do the answers? Can you do the answer and be Mr. Kolanczyk?
Yeah.
Anytime you guys, if you want to break or whatever, just let me know. We can switch off, switch up. And I'm sure we'll be taking various break. I'm sorry.
I can do any court reporter or anything like that, Jack, if it comes up, if you want.
Yeah. If you would do the court reporter, please.
And the judge?
Sure.
There's no
judge.
There's no judge.
Oh, yeah. Never mind.
All righty. Line 13, whenever you're ready, Susan.
Mr. Kolanczyk, if I agree to receive your home address and telephone number off the record, are you agreeable to your lawyer providing it to us?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes,
Yes.
yes.
Oh, oh. It'll be off the public record.
Yeah, okay.
I want to talk to you about your time with the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department, and eventually we'll move to the events relating to the sexual assault of Penny Bernston and the arrest of Stephen Avery. Okay?
Okay.
So let me start with some general background stuff. Tell me how old you are, please.
69.
And are you currently employed?
No, no.
How long have you been retired?
Oh, I think it's 13 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And by the way, there's nothing wrong with approximating if you just tell us that that's what you're doing, okay? You know,
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but I think it's X years. That's fine. So, what was the last job you did before retiring?
Before retiring,
Yes, sir.
last job was the sheriff department. I was a juvenile officer and investigator.
Okay. How long had you been a juvenile officer?
It would probably have been probably 20 years,
And how long an investigator?
same amount of time.
Same time.
Yeah.
Okay. And when did you start with the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department?
Well, why don't I just give you my history of,
Sure, that would be great.
okay, I started out as a jailer around 1960, and around 1962, I went to City of Two Rivers for about 8.5 years. And then I came back to the sheriff's department. That would have been around 70, I believe. And I retired from the sheriff department.
And I'm sorry, when did you retire? Around 90?
When,
92, something like that?
check my watch here.
Oh, okay.
It ain't on there. I retired. It should have been 91. Yeah, 91, I believe. The hell?
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, could you give me some sense of what the duties are of a juvenile officer and investigator?
Well, it's kind of a, well, it's more or less detective work, but it also included the processing of juvenile papers, juvenile process with social services, and of course, like going to court to more or less take care of the case. The investigative work was to investigate everything from, I suppose, barking dogs to murder one, but I never got to the murder one thing yet, so,
Okay.
but it covered just about anything that needed investigating work, so.
And forgive me for not understanding the terminology your department uses, but is there someone who may be a juvenile officer and someone else who may be an investigator?
Well, yes. In our case, it was combined because when I first got this job, the sheriff department was sheriff, and then there was county traffic where we had a very small department. So we had to kind of cover all the bases as much as possible, and that stayed with me as the sheriff department and county traffic merged. So, and it was well, it didn't require all of my time being a juvenile officer, so therefore I was also involved in investigative work.
So before the merger, you and people like Lieutenant Bilkey, for example, would have been in traffic?
Bilkey was in traffic. No, I was in the sheriff.
You were always in the sheriff's department?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I was in the sheriff department. Yeah.
And after the merger, the department was substantially larger, obviously.
Oh, yes, it was. Well, they took in traffic, and there was it was not traffic anymore. It was sheriff department, period. And everybody was Well, they were all deputies in the beginning, but they had their duties to do. And of course, then we had our investigative work to do,
Sure.
process service and whatever. So, yeah.
Did the jailer activities that you'd been involved with earlier continue at any later stage in your career?
No, no. That was in the old jail.
Okay.
And after that, I didn't do any more jailer work or turnkey work, whatever you want to call it. So, yeah.
Okay. So I take it your contact with the jail, except perhaps in your capacity as an investigator, stopped many years ago?
I would say so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me move you up then to what is the focus of this lawsuit, and that is the rape of Penny Bjornson
Mm-hmm.
and the arrest of Steve Avery and the processing of that case, okay?
Mm-hmm.
First, do you understand? Well, you remember being interviewed by some state agents?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay. And you know that they prepared reports of interviews just as law enforcement people usually do.
Yes.
And do you know that we've had access to a report of your interview?
I'm sure you have. Yeah.
Okay. And if, sir, at any point in the time that I'm questioning you, it would be easier for you to refresh your recollection by looking at that report, let me know, because I have an extra copy here that I'd be happy to just pass over.
Yeah. Yeah. I never got a copy of that.
Okay. Well, as we're talking about things, I'm certain that we'll make reference to it, and I'll just give you a copy,
Okay.
and we'll give you a chance to read it, okay?
Okay.
But let me begin with the first time that you became aware that there had been an assault. How did that happen and approximately when?
Well, it happened, I believe it was July 29th. I had actually 2 days off and I was preparing to move out of my residence because my wife and I were ending our marriage. And I had a trailer full of stuff and a station wagon full of stuff. My neighbor was helping out. And I started pulling out of the driveway and my daughter screams. She says, quote, "Dad, telephone," end quote. And I says, quote, "Who is it?" End quote. She said, quote, "Sheriff's Department," end quote. Well, I suppose I should have kept driving, but it's one of those things. But then when I got the phone and dispatcher said, quote unquote, "Thank God you're here," she says, quote, we've had a rape," end quote. And she says, quote, "I can't get anybody else," end quote. And
You could just answer his question. That was Miss Doyle.
pardon?
When you become aware, when you became aware was the question.
Oh,
It's okay. I mean, you can continue
okay.
if you were answering that question.
All right. So
Mr. Doyle, well, is there another question besides when he became aware? I think he answered that.
it was at my residence when I was moving out of it.
Yes, and you were telling us how you became aware because of the conversation
Telephone call to the house. Yeah.
with the dispatcher.
Yeah.
And when you were interrupted, you were telling me what the dispatcher was saying to you. So please continue with that.
Well, it was just that there was a rape and that she said she couldn't get a hold of anybody else. So she says, quote unquote, "Could you come in?" I said, quote, "It's going to take a little while," end quote.
Okay, and did you tell the dispatcher, for example, how long it might take you?
I told her it would take me about an hour.
And was that because of where you lived and where the hospital was?
I was going to Manitowoc with my furniture and I had to unload this stuff. I mean, I couldn't just park everything and run.
Sure. And your vehicle hooked up to a trailer or something?
Yep, a trailer.
So did you have to either unhook the trailer or else batten down the furniture?
I got it to where I was going, and then I unhooked it all, and I got the car and went over to, it was Memorial Hospital at the time on Reed Avenue.
Okay.
Sorry, Reed Avenue?
Reed Avenue, yeah.
Thank you.
REED.
And did
I
it
want
take you
to
about an hour to get there?
I want to interrupt
Oh,
just briefly, just for 1 second, and
okay.
note this exchange that she's talking about, this dispatcher with Kolanczyk, because there are other depositions and so forth where this is actually true. She couldn't get a hold of anyone to come in. There was a problem. So I just wanted to reiterate that. You go ahead.
Got
Go
it.
ahead whenever you're ready, Susan.
And did it take you about an hour to get there?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
When you got to the, excuse me, when you got to the hospital, who was there that you recognized?
Well, the sheriff was there and Bill Beck, Lieutenant Bill Beck. In fact, I had called him to tell him I would be late.
Okay. Called Beck, that is?
Pardon?
I'm sorry. You had called Mr. Beck to tell him you would be late?
I called Lieutenant Beck, yeah, down there, and told him I would be late. I had to get this stuff moved, get my neighbor back or whatever. But no, I got there within an hour. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm sorry. I think I interrupted you. You were telling me that the sheriff was there and that Bill Beck was there.
Yep.
Was there anybody else there that you recognized?
I don't recall.
Okay.
I don't recall. No.
Did you ever see or have any conversation with Ms. Bjornson that night?
Nope.
How about her husband, Tom?
No.
Anybody else that you can recall having interaction with at the hospital?
Jean Couché. Actually, two people. Someone from the jail came with some pictures, and also Jean Couché came. Was there any other? The rest were all in the emergency room, so.
Okay. And again, let me follow up on that. When you say, quote, the rest were in the emergency room, end quote, is that where you mean Mr. and Mrs. Bjornson were?
I didn't see Tom Beertson. I know she was in there. She had to be in there. I didn't see her go in, but that's where they would have taken her.
Oh, sure.
The doctors, the nurses. I think there was a deputy in there, a female deputy. I think that would have been, I shouldn't really say I saw her either. I didn't, but I think that would have been Judy Dvorak. So,
Judy Dvorak.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, let me come back to this a little bit and make sure I understand what you're saying.
sure.
When you get there, the only two folks that you recognize are the sheriff and Bill Beck.
Yeah,
And then shortly, well, I won't say shortly, sometime after that,
right. Yeah,
you saw Couché and you saw somebody from the jail.
yeah. The guy from the jail came first,
Okay.
and then Couché came later.
Okay. And now I'm going to ask you to go back and try to give me your best sense of how time passed between your arrival at the hospital and the arrival of the person from the jail. Actually,
Mr.
let me
Kelly,
withdraw.
you have a call.
Let me withdraw that question.
Yeah,
Mr. Kelly, you have a call.
Well, I'm just going to keep going. Yeah,
yeah.
Mr. Kelly, yeah. Let me go back up and ask you a different question. When you got to the hospital, you've told us whom you spoke with, but do we need to go off the record for a minute?
Yeah, let's go off the record.
Off the record, 9:49 to 9:53. We're back on the record.
Thank you. I think before we got the note about the telephone call, I was asking you what you had done when you arrived at the hospital. Did you talk to anybody? You know, that kind of thing? Can you just give me a narrative of what you did when you got to the hospital? Whether you had any conversation with the people that you did see?
Yeah. Well, I had a conversation with the sheriff telling me where the hell I was, where the hell was I that I came in late. I explained to him what I had with this furniture thing, and I got down. I called Bill Beck and told him that I'd be in within an hour, and I was there. And he was not real happy with that. And I asked him, was there anything I could do? And he says no. He had made one remark somewhere during this, said as far as he was concerned, I could go home. And I made a remark that, well, it's still light out. Do you want me to go to the crime scene, wherever it is? I didn't even know where the crime scene was, north of Two Rivers someplace. He says no. He says he had Bruno and the dog. That would have been Bruno Frunfeld and his dog up there. I says, okay. Somewhere along the time, I told him also that I'd stick around in case I would be needed for something. So,
Did that conversation that you've just described take place very shortly after you arrived at the hospital?
right, yeah.
I would imagine that you were sort of surprised at the idea of being called at home and told you had to come in and then being told there was nothing to do.
Well, I also reminded the sheriff that was my day off, and he says, well, I had to come in. So he says he wasn't happy about that. And there were other people that probably should have been around, but we had kind of a weird system there, and we didn't have any standby, but yet it was sort of a standby.
Actually, that's what I wanted to ask you. At the time that this occurred, which is late July of 1985, was there any kind of organizational system within the sheriff's department that called for a detective to be like a duty officer or someone that might have a title like that, a contact person, an emergency person?
Well, I would think Lieutenant Belts would have been that one. Supposedly he had a radio and they couldn't get a hold of him either. So,
Okay. And I suppose such a system could get organized by rank or by seniority or by special skills. Were you on any such list that you know of?
oh,
So, I mean, and again, I take it that being called in to something like this, especially on a day off, was pretty unusual.
yes.
Could you recall that ever happening before?
Miss Doyle, that he was called?
Yes.
Not right offhand, no.
And I take it if it had happened before, when you got to where you were directed to report, there was something for you to do.
Oh, yeah. You take the case on, and here the sheriff was already there, so he was number one.
Let me ask whether you had any conversation that you can recall with Mr. Beck, again, before the arrival of the jailer.
Before,
Yes, sir.
just a telephone call. I called him. I said, I understand we got something going on. Where are you? He was at Memorial Hospital. I says, Bill, it's going to be a while for me to get there. I got to explain it to him. And he says, well, he says he's not really up to it either at that time because he wasn't sure he was assigned over there. But that's about all we talked about. Yeah,
Okay. And that was before you got to the hospital then, I take it?
before I got to the hospital. Yeah.
When you go to the hospital, did you have any conversation with Mr. Beck?
Yeah, somewhere along the line. I don't know where. I can't recall who told me that Mr. Avery's name had come up, so I don't know who told me that, where it came from, what, but he was a suspect, and that's all I knew about it.
Okay. The only 4 people that you saw there and sort of realized who they were, though, again, are the sheriff, Mr. Beck, the jailer, and Mr. Couchet.
Right.
And so, does the fact that you heard this business about Avery being identified mean that that statement would have come from one of them?
Somewhere it came, popped up, or whatever, so I have no idea.
Okay. I take it from what you're telling us that you wouldn't be able to tell us with certainty when it is that you heard that statement. Is that right? I mean, for example, do you think you heard it before the jailer got there or after the jailer got there?
It was before he got there.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Now, when the person that you've described as a jailer came in, was that someone that you recognized as a jailer?
I thought, I'm just, I thought it was Dave Dvorak, but I'm not sure on that.
You thought it was Dave Dvorak?
Maybe Dave, yeah. It was like a taller guy. Dave is tall,
Okay.
but I'm not sure it was Dave. I didn't talk to him that much.
The I thought I had this on this pad. Let me grab another pad. Go off the record for a second.
The record 559 to 559. Back on the record.
Thank you. Let me try a few names of jailers, okay? There's a jailer named Phil Kenzel.
Yeah, I know him.
That wasn't he?
Pardon?
Was he the one at the hospital?
No.
Okay. Did you know a jailer named Ohm or Ohm?
Jim Old? Yeah.
Was he the one at the hospital?
No.
There was a person named Beretta, I think.
Yeah, Vic Beretta.
Was he the one?
He was, no.
There were times when Robert Herman may have been a jailer as opposed to a jail administrator.
That I don't recall at all. I know Robert Herman,
Oh, okay.
but it wasn't him.
It wasn't he. Fine. And Larry Welnick. Do you know Larry?
I know Larry. Yep.
And it wasn't Larry?
I know where you're going with this, but I can't.
What you just said?
I says, no, it wasn't. And I says, I know where you're going with this, but I'm not sure in my own mind that that was David. But at that, a little bit of moving around there. Good God, I don't even know what I just read.
Didn't make
Sure.
any sense at all. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Continue.
Sure.
I know he came in and he talked to the sheriff and he left.
I understand. And all I was trying to do to see if we could sort of exclude some people.
Okay.
And you've been helpful in doing that.
Oh, yeah, fine. Yeah.
So, having gone through these names of folks, by the way, are there any other jailers whose names come to mind as people that it was not?
Boy, you're asking.
Oh, I know. And if you don't know, that's fine.
I'd have to give that more thought.
Okay.
Who was all up there yet? And
Reporta.
I'm sorry. It was all up there. Did you say?
Yeah.
who was all up there?
Who was all up there? Yeah.
Reporter. Who was all up there?
And if, as we're going through this process, you happen to remember the names of any other jailers and say, yeah, there was another jailer named so-and-so, but I know it wasn't him. Just tell me, okay?
Okay.
But at the moment, having gone through this list of names with you, are you still of the view that it was probably Mr. Dvorak, but you're not 100% certain?
Right.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
And again, I take it that means that Mr. Dvorak was a jailer back at about that time, around that time.
Yes.
And his physical description would be consistent with the description of the person that you recall?
Well, the height thing,
Yeah.
Dave's pretty tall, so yeah.
Okay. Now, can you give me a sense of how much time passed between your arrival at the hospital and the arrival of the jailer?
Oh, I would say it would have been say within an hour.
Okay. Did you have a conversation with the jailer?
No.
Could you see what he was doing when he got there?
Yes.
What was that?
He gave the sheriff a stack of pictures that we would have for like mugshots and stuff up at the jail. He gave him a stack of those.
And, sir, if I could, the cameras recorded this, but it looked like you had your index fingers and your thumb.
Yeah, I would say about 2.5 inch stack of maybe 2 inch stack of Polaroid pictures.
Okay.
Yeah, of prisoners.
All right, let's pause right here because
Hmm?
you know where I'm going with this, right?
Well, yeah,
And
I think
those
I know, but
well, um, we've talked about this before, and this is a driving point as to where this photo came from. That well, number one, that Mr. Cachet, the pencil, made his tracing, and there's no doubt in my mind. I'm sure there are others that this was a direct tracing from that photograph that seems to have disappeared. There are other photographs too. Remember, there's another one that Kolanczyk had written on the back of it to keep per Sheriff
Yep.
Kolanczyk. Remember, that was
Yep.
from
Yep.
yeah, I don't remember which deposition it
mhm.
was, but it's one of the ones that's been prior to this.
Yeah, I remember
This
reading that.
yeah, this stack of Polaroids is super important to Glenn and Kelly. They're trying to drive down where that photo came from, and where and now where is it? Because it seems to have disappeared.
Like it never existed.
Right. So again, I mean, this is another one of the key elements in this setting up of Avery uh, and the part of the crux of this lawsuit. But again, keep in mind also that their goal is to pull out any and all information about what these people, any of them that were associated with the sheriff's department, the prosecutor's office, about what and when they knew about Gregory Allan. So, with that said, if there's any comments, we broke here for a second. We're 25 pages in, so you ladies have done fantastic. Any questions or comments that we need to get to, Alice? Have you seen anything?
We've had a few people join us though. We've got James Crane, Hi Yoga, Katie Diddich joined us. Paul Ward has joined us. Under Your Scars has joined us. Charlotte Dowling has joined us as well. And I got Share earlier. So hello and welcome to everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming. This is the 2005 solo deposition of Allan Kolanczyk, the former investigator and juvenile officer for Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department, and he retired in, it looks like 91 or 92, best we can kind of determine here. So he's been out, this is 2005, so he's been out 12, 13 years from the Sheriff's Department, but he's he seems very sharp. And to add to this, Kolanczyk attended this deposition, which he didn't attend very many, but he did attend this one.
You know, I also just had the thought that possibly in that stack of photos was a picture of Gregory Allan
Absolutely.
Yeah.
that Kolanczyk wanted to get rid of.
Absolutely. 100% correct. I totally agree with that, Susan.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So let's continue on. If there's no more questions, then hey, thanks for the new joiners coming in. So we're a quarter of the way through this one. So you ladies continue whenever you're ready.
And based on your knowledge and experience in dealing with those kind of photographs, I mean, I take it you saw them at the jail
Yeah.
and you'd use them yourself in your detective capacity?
Yeah, we'd use them as a photo lineups.
Sure. That you have a general familiarity with the type of paper that the pictures are printed on?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, they're Polaroids, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yes.
Can you give me an estimate of your best guess as to how many pictures would have been there?
Boy, probably say maybe 30,
Okay,
give or take.
sure. I mean, that's just your best guess.
Yeah, because they're a little bit thicker, those Polaroids, and I'm trying to picture a 2-inch stack of Polaroid pictures,
Sure.
so I would say at the maximum that many.
Okay. And you saw that pack of pictures be handed by the jailer to Sheriff Kolanczyk?
Right.
And did you see what Sheriff Kolanczyk did with them?
Yeah, he took them and he stuck them in his sport coat. He stuck them in his pocket.
Okay. And was there any conversation between Mr. Kolanczyk and the jailer that you overheard?
No.
Did the jailer, after giving these photographs to the sheriff, stick around or did he leave
He left.
right away?
He turned around and he left. Yeah.
Okay. And what did the sheriff do after receiving those photographs and putting them in his pocket?
He just sat there waiting. He was waiting for the emergency room to be clear, so I would assume so he could talk to the victim.
Okay. So you had not seen him in the emergency room? That is Sheriff Kolanczyk?
No, I saw him go in, but
Well, let's see. When you say you saw him go in, was that after he got the pictures or before he got the pictures or both?
well, I wasn't there early enough. If he was in there earlier, he could have been. I have no idea. But this was after he got the pictures and he started going in there to probably, I would assume, to talk to the victim.
And when the jailer came with those photographs, was Mr. Beck available and around at that time?
I think Bill might have been gone by then. I'm not sure. I had nothing, no more contact with Bill.
Okay.
I had
No more contact with Bill.
Thank you.
Okay.
At the time that these photos were delivered, it sounds to me as though you recall yourself and the jailer and the sheriff and really nobody else that you remember. Is that right?
Well, Boucher came in after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
How long? And I know it's hard to remember exactly, but was he very close on the heels of the jailer or?
Yeah, I would say so. The best as I recall, he came in shortly right after.
Okay.
Right after.
And for example, was the sheriff still there with the pictures in his pocket
Yes.
by the time
Yes.
Mr. Couchet got there?
Wait until he's done with his question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Sorry.
No, it's not a problem with me. Yes, was what you were saying?
What was the question again?
I'll try it. At the time that Mr. Couchet arrived, was the sheriff still in your presence with the photographs?
Yes.
Okay. And do you know if the jailer had left by the time Mr. Couchet got there?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so at the time that the jailer leaves, is there any conversation between the jailer and anyone else that you overheard?
That I overheard?
Yes, sir.
Not really, no. No.
Okay. So now it's yourself and the sheriff and Mr. Couchet. Is that the three people that are there that you recognize?
Yeah. Yes.
And was there any conversation that you were a party to with those other folks?
Yes. I had asked the sheriff, first of all, I says, should I go back to the headquarters and we had a setup for manila folders for lineups. You could set them in an envelope or in pockets. And he says, no, I'll take care of that. Okay. So then Couchet came in and he was there. I asked what he was doing there, and he says, quote, I have to make a composite, end quote.
Okay.
And I think when the sheriff started going into the emergency room, Couchet said, quote, hey, wait a minute, let me get my composite first, end quote.
I'm sorry, could you repeat what you were just saying? When the sheriff
When the doors opened up, the sheriff started going into the emergency room, and Couchet said, hey, wait a minute, sheriff, let me get my composite first, the drawing of the possible suspect. And then Couchet went in. I have no idea if the sheriff went in with him. That I don't know, but I know Couchet went in first.
What did you understand Mr. Couchet to be meaning by that statement to the sheriff?
Well, if you can get a description of a suspect, you want someone to make a composite first, a drawing first. Like say you were a suspect, a drawing first. Not that we come in later with a picture of you or a picture of somebody else that might look like you, and then that might be placed in the mind of someone saying, well, that picture here looks like the one I just had the guy draw.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Sure.
isn't this interesting right here? This is a really
That's
interesting exchange.
very
Yeah.
interesting answer there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So if what he remembers is correct, as Kolanczyk, so Couchet says, "Hey, before you go in there, Mr. Tom Kolanczyk, Sheriff, I need to go in and get my composite drawing from whatever she can describe to me." That's really interesting because
Mm-hmm.
I fully believe 100% he traced that photograph from the jail photo. And for those that that may be new out there listening, this is the only time Couchet ever did a drawing for the sheriff's department for anything like this. The first and only time.
I think he did more or less trace it, and then I think he showed it to Penny, and I think that she had him change the nose a little bit because it's all kind of funky. And she had him change a few little things on there, which is what she said in court.
Yeah.
So I think that's why the nose looks like it's been erased and redrawn, and a few things like that.
Kind of smudged up.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So I think Penny thought that, he had gone from the description, but yeah.
Yeah, I've got that drawing. Well, it's on my external. I don't have everything back on this computer yet, but yeah, it's a really interesting thing what they did, and this exchange here I'm sure that this
Yeah.
set the radar of Glenn and Kelly off immediately. I'm sure it did.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
line
Yeah.
16.
Well, James Crane says Couchet hung it up in his living room. Why? Yeah, he framed his frame job, best framing in the county. Yeah, he was
Yep.
proud of it. He was proud of it, and there's no doubt
Yeah.
he was extremely proud of this drawing. So
His tracing, you mean?
his
Yeah.
tracing, absolutely.
He
So
also had it hung up in his office on Otto.
Yeah.
yeah, I think until he retired,
Yeah.
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 So yeah, he was very proud of it. So all right, yeah, continue on.
Line 16.
Yeah.
Yep.
You want to get the composite first.
Okay. Had there been a composite drawing prepared by that stage by Mr. Couchet, to your knowledge?
I believe there was. I never saw it.
By that stage? That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you know where Mr. Couchet would have gotten the information on which to base his composite sketch at that time?
I can only assume, and I don't think that's right.
Sure, you're allowed to do that.
I would assume he would have got it from the victim, Penny, you know?
Okay, so, I mean, you thought at least it was possible that Couchet had had some earlier contact with Penny Berenson?
No. What I'm saying by that is he went in and probably talked to her to get the composite where she could describe who the person would have been. Then he would have been done and he would have drew that up, okayed it with her. I would assume that was a process he did. And then he would have left and then you could bring in the lineup.
Okay, and I'm sorry. I'm sure I'm just dense and not getting this right, and so just bear with me for a second, okay?
No problem. No problem.
I understood that when Couchet arrived, as the sheriff started going into the emergency room, Couchet said, quote, "No, let me go in. Let me get my composite," end quote.
Right.
Do you mean that he was then going in to make the composite?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes. Yes.
I got it. You didn't understand that Couchet already had a composite and wanted to bring it into the room.
No, 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 no,
Okay,
no.
I understand now. Thank you.
That's how you get a composite.
Sure.
You get it from the victim or the witness or whatever before you show them any pictures because they could describe a picture.
Sure. Okay. The I take it that you didn't see any interaction between the jailer who brought over the photographs and Mr. Couchet because you didn't see them together at the same time.
No, I was too far back, but I can give you I can give you an assumption on this again.
Okay, you're allowed to do that.
Well, I'm sure the sheriff ordered those pictures, and the jailer might have gave them to him and said, "This is the best we could have done with what we had to work with and everything else," because, it's pretty strict what you have to do with these pictures too. You don't want to have a colored guy with 5 whites. You don't want to have a big fat guy with 4 skinny guys, and stuff like that. So I think there might have been that type of conversation saying, I did the best we did, or here they are, or whatever, something like that. But other than that, that's all I can tell you. Yeah.
Okay. And I want to go back into what you were just saying. First of all, as of 1985, you've had, 25 years experience in law enforcement, right?
About that.
I mean, different types of law enforcement.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And you had yourself participated in the preparation of what are called photo lineups, correct?
Yes. Yes.
And you had had situations in which you gathered photographs?
Yes,
when you were a jailer.
as a jailer and working with jailers, make sure that the photographs, were a good batch,
Okay.
shall we say. Okay?
So tell us generally how that process works. I mean, how does the jailer get information to use in determining what photos to select to avoid the kinds of problems you were just describing?
Well, I think at that point you'd have to know who the suspect was.
That's a really good point right there.
It's a really
Yeah.
good point.
I mean, in order to get photos that kind of matched their suspect, they would have to have a suspect.
They would
Yeah.
have to have some kind of interaction first to alert the jailer as to what kind of photographs to pull. There had to be a description. Had to be.
Yeah.
Well, you have Judy Dvorak, right?
You sure do.
Yeah. Yep.
She was in there.
Huh.
She was in there with the victim.
You would
Orchestrating the whole
think
thing.
that gathering the photos up would be after Gene did his sketch and
That's
after
when.
they've got the description.
That's right. That's when it should have
Mhm.
happened, but it already has happened, and that's the point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we on one
Uh,
No.
or
no,
or
three,
three,
three.
four?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, four. Yeah, four.
Yeah.
Although it could be run through possibly without that, but the best time is when you have a suspect or suspects, and then you put them in a lineup with other people that have the same type of facial structure, hair, facial hair,
Sure.
and stuff. The whole works. Size, weight, height. And then what we would do with the photograph or the photo album, we'd open it up and we'd have 6 slots. You could slide the pictures in there where there's absolutely no name or nothing showing, or it would be just a jail number, and they'd all be dressed alike in there, probably orange. And the thing of it is, when you take it, you open it up and it's the people. You might have 3 or 4 of them too.
Mm-hmm.
And because you want to make sure that if you say that's the one, well, that's okay, but to make sure they see them all.
So it sounds to me as though what you observed in this jailer bringing a stack of photographs in would have been consistent with what you had heard before the jailer showed up, which was that Stephen Avery was a suspect.
Mr. Baskin, object to the form.
Is that correct?
I think it misstates his testimony as to when he heard that statement.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's why I asked if it's correct. Is that correct? And if it's not, correct me.
okay. One more time on that one.
Okay. I believe that you had said earlier
Yep.
that the comment about Mr. Avery being a suspect was made before the jailer arrived. Is that so?
Yeah. I don't know who made,
Sure.
but that was the thing, was that it's the suspect was Steve Avery.
And then you see a person arrive from the jail with a group of photographs.
Right.
And that process, that is Stephen Avery being identified as a suspect and a jailer showing up with a set of photographs, was consistent with your experience as to how it is that a jailer might gather photographs to be used in a photo lineup?
Right.
Okay. And so I can make sure I understand it. If a jailer is given the name of a suspect and the jailer already has a photograph of that suspect, then the jailer can pull that photograph and then, with that in hand, look through other photographs to find people that resemble that suspect.
Absolutely. Right.
And is that what it's supposed to be done as?
Uh, Basically, that's what you do. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And then the use of those photographs passes out of the jailer's hands and into the detective's hands or the sheriff's hands or whoever who was ever. I mean, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Let me back up.
yeah, yeah.
Does the jailer put it into this display thing or the detective?
No, we do that.
Yeah. Okay.
We would do that. Yeah, the jailer could because, they know what we're doing on that too. But generally, we would wind up doing that. Yeah, because they got their duties too.
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay.
So you had not gotten any of these display folders for the photographs to be used at the hospital, correct?
No.
I mean, you'd offered to, but that was rejected,
Yep, that was rejected.
and you didn't see the jailer bring in any such folders.
No.
And given the fact that you've described the photographs as going into the sheriff's pocket, presumably they were not in one of these display folders at that time.
No. No.
The photos, well, it also sounds like there were a lot more photos than would originally go into one of those folders, right?
Oh, I would say so. Yeah. Like I says, how many are in a 2-inch stack?
Sure. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
just using 30 as an approximation.
yeah,
I mean, that would fill up 5 or so of these folders, it sounds like.
yeah. Right, right.
Did that seem normal identification procedure to you?
Object to the form of the question. That was Mr. Mayor.
You're allowed to answer.
Miss Doyle, you can answer.
Can I answer?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that you understand that that's a quick shot we can go with, and then later on it would be a lineup with real people. And I would say yes, that would be an important function in a case, probably such as this or any other case where we may have a suspect.
And from your experience, you recognize that the importance of a photo lineup preceding a human lineup is that the photo lineup can affect the person who is making the identification out of the lineup, right?
Object to the form and foundation. Miss Doyle, I join. Mr. Mayor, I don't know how you can speculate as to what's going to affect a person.
You've made your objection.
Miss Doyle, you can answer.
I can answer that?
Mm-hmm.
Run that by me one more time.
Sure.
I gotta check on your words here.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, this they do this constantly through these depositions. They break the flow, and they've done it intentionally, knowing he's going to be able to answer the damn question.
Right,
Mhm.
right.
All right, continue on line 17.
I may expand it a little bit. Based on your training, your experience, and your own observations, you know that one of the things that makes photo lineups important when they are conducted before a human lineup is conducted is that the photo lineup can affect the way a witness views the human being lineup.
Mr. Mayor, same objection. Miss Doyle, same.
Mr. Gobelli, objection, foundation.
Miss Doyle, same objections.
You're allowed to answer.
I can answer?
Yeah, you can answer it.
Okay. Yeah, it possibly could, but you got to understand that when we're seeking someone, the time is very important so we can get an idea. If there might have been 3 people or something, we probably would have picked all 3 of them up. But if it's a definite, this is the guy, well, we're going to hunt the guy down until then, and then we'll have a lineup later on. But photography should be I think the photography was all right. I didn't see any of these pictures, but I know what they are when I see them in a jail, and everything else, and there's no difference between them. But yeah, you do that to expedite getting the suspect. And later on, yeah, with all that can instill in someone's mind, I would say I'm not a psychiatrist, but this is definitely the person, and you would have a lineup by then.
Sure. I mean, it's ordinary human experience, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
That if you're shown a photo lineup with 4 African Americans and 1 white guy, and the white guy is a suspect,
yeah.
and then you're shown a lineup,
And yeah, well, that's a little bit,
yeah, I understand.
yeah,
I'm taking one that's obviously at the far edge of the extremes.
yeah.
Okay?
I think what you're saying is that if somebody,
Miss Doyle, well, just let him ask a question
okay,
and then you can answer.
okay,
We'll try it. There are occasions in which a photo lineup can affect a physical lineup.
Mr. Cavelli, objection? No.
Agreed?
Objection, no foundation.
Mr. Mayor, join. Miss Doyle, join. Mr. Mayor, incomplete hypothetical also.
You can answer.
Miss Doyle, you can answer.
you're just objecting again. Okay,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, they're just objecting again.
Mr. Mayor, incomplete hypothetical also. Form.
yeah, I'd say it's possible, yes.
Okay.
Uh, yes,
And that's why there are certain procedures that you attempt to follow when you're setting up a photographic identification lineup, correct?
yeah,
And one of those procedures is the manner in which the photographs are selected, correct?
yeah. And there should have been there would, oh, I'm a little behind, I guess. Um, can you
You're
scroll,
reading
Jack?
off
I'm getting
YouTube.
up. Yeah,
Sorry.
that's okay. There would have been a record of who the other suspects were
Sure. And
and number. They were numbered, but not names. Yeah, so number 5 was picked, and that would have been maybe not a suspect. So
that's all part of the process that's to be involved
yeah,
in putting together a photo lineup, right?
yeah.
And similarly, the manner in which the photographs are displayed to a witness can have an effect on the witness's ability to make an identification. Agree?
Mr. Bascom, object to the form.
Well, the procedure is that they're laid out by side or whatever you have, or one at a time. It shouldn't, it shouldn't occur.
Right. But that's my point exactly, is that there are procedures that are set up to avoid having the manner in which the photos are displayed to the witness affecting the witness's identification, right?
I would say, yeah, that's that would be your procedure here. You set them out and you stay away.
Sure.
Porter.
Go ahead and continue on line 5.
Okay. And
And and again, to take some obvious examples and examples that certainly wouldn't be followed in any photo lineup you were doing, but just to show what we're talking about. It would not be an appropriate photo lineup to include 2 or 3 pictures of one suspect and then 1 picture each of the remaining suspects. That would be suggestive, correct?
oh yeah, that would be verboten, I would say.
Sure.
Yeah.
And similarly, if you were showing photographs one at a time, it would not be appropriate to show a photograph of the suspect and then a photograph of somebody else, and then another photograph of the suspect, and then a photograph of someone else.
No, that would not be right. No, that would be absolutely wrong procedure.
So there are procedures that are to be followed.
Yeah,
In the hope of lessening the likelihood of biasing
right.
the other lineups and identifications, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Now, I take it you were not present when any photo lineups were shown to Ms. Berenson.
No, I wasn't.
And were you present when the physical lineup of suspects or a suspect and others was made available to Ms. Berenson?
No, no,
So you never saw the photographs again after they went into the pocket of Sheriff Kolanczyk. Would that be a fair statement?
I didn't.
Mr. Covelli, excuse me, I think that's vague.
Mr. Mayor, yeah,
Mr. Covelli, this makes it almost sound like he actually saw the images on the photos. Mr. Bascom, right? Mr. Covelli, so I'll object as vague and indefinite.
You never saw the photographs again after they went into the pocket.
I never saw the photographs at all, really, so
Right. And you never saw them come out of the sheriff's pocket.
no. As he's going in, I think he was reaching for them, and that's when Mr. Couche said, "Hey, let me get my drawing first."
Okay. And then Couche and Kolanczyk go into the emergency room?
Uh,
Miss Doyle, I'm just going to object. That misstates his prior testimony.
Well, that's for the witness to decide.
Mr. Baskin, for the record.
Miss Doyle, he already answered that question.
No, it's for the oh, sorry. Kelly. Who's Kelly?
You can do both.
you.
No, it's for the witness.
Mr. Bascom, or the record.
Mr. Kelly, the witness. Glenn. No, it's not Mr. Kelly. Stop interrupting the testimony by Mr. Glenn. Sir, if you have any problem,
Mr. Bascom, we can make our objections.
Mr. Kelly, no, you can't, not the way you're doing it.
Mr. Bascom, yes, we can.
Mr. Kelly, we'll take that to the judge.
Mr. Bascom, well, take it to the judge.
By Mr. Glenn. If you have any problem understanding the question, feel free to ask me. Or if what I'm saying isn't accurate, feel free to correct me. I mean, you've been doing that right along here, haven't you?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
I guess no idea what.
Miss Doyle, you can answer it.
Ask it again, okay?
You saw Kolanczyk and Couche
Yeah, okay.
going into the emergency room together. Is that correct?
And no, I wasn't quite sure. I guess I'm more or less assuming here that Couche would have went in first. I did not actually see Kolanczyk go in there,
Okay.
but
So you never saw Kolanczyk go into the room at all that night?
no.
Okay. Then I did misunderstand.
Yeah,
Thank you. So at this time, when they were heading toward the room, that's when Couche made this statement about wanting to get his composite first?
the sheriff was getting, I don't know what he was sitting on, a desk or something, and he reached in his pocket to get those pictures. He was going to go in there. And then Couche was standing a little distance from him and he says, "Hey, wait. Let me get my composite first."
Okay.
And then they paused there, I guess. I didn't really watch that closely. I assumed Couche would have went in first. If Kolanczyk followed, I have no idea.
Let's break here just for 1
Okay.
sec. Let's break here for just 1
Yeah.
second. First, I want to welcome Dr. Silkman. He's in the live chat. He told me
Hey,
he'd try to come, but
Silky.
yeah, he had things to do this morning. Well, it's morning for him, so but he said he would definitely try to listen in. So yeah, I can't really get to. Well, maybe I can. Hold on here. We're at line 22. Just a second. Dr. Silkman said this is nothing but pure obfuscation, and that's right. And the witness knows full well that if he says the wrong thing in front of Kolanczyk, they will never find his body again. Yeah, I can't entirely disagree with that. But Kolanczyk, he was really pretty open with what he said. He didn't really seem to be holding back too much. But I think it's a little obvious that those lawyers from the state had talked to him. These other lawyers had spoke with him. And Doc says Mr. Glenn knew 100% beforehand what type of game was going to be played, and the good old boys, he wasn't disappointed. Yeah, that's true, Doc. Absolutely. So, but we get back to this situation here where Cachet and Kolanczyk are sitting there talking. We have to assume that because Cachet, I'm sure, was sitting there with him. So what are they talking about? Of course, we can only speculate. And was it to the point where, maybe Kolanczyk says, well, I got these photos. I need to go in and show these to her. Or I've got these photos, and Gene was there allegedly in this capacity to make this composite. And then this, when Kolanczyk went to go in there, Cachet says, hey, let me get my composite first. You kind of have to back up. We don't know the origination of what they were talking about. We can only hear from this guy the end result of some interaction there, and I can only assume. We can only speculate. So I think it's a really interesting thing, though. He's pretty open about that, and I'm sure that Kolanczyk is sitting there, probably got some bullets, sweating some bullets there. I have no doubt. So okay, let's. Sorry for the interruption. I felt like
Jack, I kind of think that's at least one reason why Kolanczyk was there to begin with. He needed to know exactly what Kolanczyk was going to say.
Absolutely, 100% agree with that, because I'm sure he remembered him being there fairly early on in the investigation.
Right.
Absolutely. Okay, let's continue on. We're probably halfway through, so you ladies are doing fantastic. Line 22, Susan.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is that you're not really sure whether both went into the room. Cachet only went into the room with Kolanczyk going in later, or whether Kolanczyk went into the room at all?
In all honesty, I don't know if they went in together. I would just assume that Gene would have went in first to make his drawing, but the sheriff could have went in with him also, just to stand by or something. I don't know.
And Gene is Couche, correct?
Couche, yeah.
Okay, so I mean, now that we've walked our way through that.
Yeah, okay.
Is it correct to say that after the photos that were given by the jailer to the sheriff went into the sheriff's pocket, you don't know, well, I'm sorry, and then Mr. Cachet made the statement about wanting to get his composite first, you don't know who, if anyone, went into the emergency room?
I think that's the best. I know they went in, but I don't know in what order.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could have been together. It could have been separate.
Yeah.
Okay. What did you do after after Couchet made his statement about wanting to do his composite? Did you continue to stick around?
I just stuck around. Yeah. Yeah.
Have any sense of how long you were there?
Well, I stayed there quite a while, yet after I think they were finished, yeah, they were finished talking to Penny, I assume. At that time, the doctors and nurses are all fleeing and whatever. And then I did have a conversation with the sheriff when he came out of there.
Okay. So there was a time then when you saw the sheriff coming out of the emergency room.
Yes.
And did you see Mr. Couchet also come out of the emergency room? Do you remember?
No.
Okay. Can you give me an estimate as to how much time passed between when you saw the sheriff come out of the room and when you heard the statement from Mr. Couchet about wanting to get his composite first?
Mr. Bascom, I'm going to object to the form.
Well, you said before they went in, and you're asking now what the time was when Couchet came back out. I don't remember him coming out. The sheriff came out, and we had a conversation for a while, and I don't know how long they were in there. It could have been, it had to take some time for him to draw his composite. I would say probably 15, 20 minutes at least. And then I can't even tell you when the sheriff came out of there.
Sure. Okay. But I mean, so it's a range that would begin with at least 15 to 20 minutes
Oh, at least. Yeah.
and could be much later.
Yeah. At least. Yeah.
Mr. Bascom, I'm going to object to the form.
Mr. Mayor, yeah.
Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, time.
Mr. Bascom, I'm not sure we're talking about the same thing here.
Mr. Mayor, range of what?
Mr. Bascom, range of what? From when to when, Steve?
Well,
Do you understand the question, sir?
yeah, I understand you're asking me what the time span from when Couchet said, let me go in, I got to get my composite, to the time that they came out or Couchet came out.
Well, to the time that Kolanczyk came out,
Oh,
because he's the one you saw come out.
yeah, they were in there a little while. I know that, maybe 20, 30 minutes, if that much.
Okay.
I don't know.
So, and that's what,
I know Couchet. It would have taken him time to draw that. You just don't scribble stick people, you know.
sure, sure. And when Kolanczyk came out, you know that that was at least 15 to 20 minutes after Kolanczyk had made his statement about wanting to do the composite first.
Roughly.
Okay. And how much longer than that is something you don't know. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Okay. So you then have a conversation with the sheriff
Yes.
after he comes out of the
Yes.
emergency room. And you know, it occurs to me, I don't think I've asked you yet to describe this area. You know, you had mentioned that the sheriff may have been sitting on a desk, and this is something that's outside the emergency room. Could you just generally give me a sense of what we're talking about?
Yes. This is kind of tough. The best I can remember that's no longer a hospital down there. It's Holy Family now. And they got a health center in guy. Sorry. He cannot stay on track. Worse than me.
No, he's kind of wandering off the trail. He does it a few times.
Yeah. And they got a health center in there or something, but it looked like there was like a waiting room and then there was a couple of doors there. And that was one of their emergency rooms as best I can remember. It may not have been that big of a waiting room, but and what he was sitting on something with his back towards me, when he got the pictures, so it could have been a desk.
Sure.
It was not a chair. That's about it. I can't give you dimensions.
Okay, that's fair enough. At the time that you were, making the observations and having the conversations that you've been describing so far in your deposition, were you always in that same area?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And that's the area immediately outside the emergency room entrance.
Yeah. And emergency door was like a straight shot. It wasn't off to the side anywhere, so yeah, I was in that room at all times.
Okay.
Reporter, I'm sorry, in that room.
At all times. I thought it's what.
At all times, yeah.
Reporter, thank you.
At all times, yeah.
Well, we'll continue. At the point where the sheriff comes out and you have some conversation, can you remember who was saying what?
Sheriff came up to me and he says, quote, "I want you in at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning," end quote. And I said, okay. He says, apparently Judy Dvorak was gathering the sheets and stuff or whatever for evidence. He says, quote, "I want you to take her to the crime lab and she doesn't know where it is," end quote. So I says, quote, "I'll be there at 7, no problem," end quote. And that was basically about the end of it. Where everybody went after that, I don't know. I didn't see Judy or anything, but she must have been gathering whatever,
Okay.
sheets and pillowcases and all that.
Let me come back and talk about that a little bit. Okay. First of all, when you're talking about Judy Dvorak gathering sheets and things, had you ever seen Judy Dvorak that night?
No, no,
Okay. And have you ever talked to her through a door or by telephone or anything that night?
no, no.
So were you aware that she was in there anyway?
Yeah, I don't know if the sheriff told me or she, I don't know who told me that, but I knew she was in there and
Okay. Might Mr. Beck have told you, for example, early on?
possibly, yeah,
Okay.
because it's a female with a female thing.
Sure.
And then also assuming that she collected all the evidence, which that would have been her job in there.
Okay. And let me come back to that a little bit. When you say female to female, obviously Penny Berenson is a woman.
Yes, yes,
She was the victim of a rape.
yes.
And I take it you're telling us that it was standard Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department procedure to attempt to provide a woman law enforcement person or counselor to a victim.
Yeah, I think most departments do this to put ease on the people. The woman's got enough problems the way it is. And so that's why, unless, I don't know what other reason, I'm sure she was called in on it, but I don't know. I don't have any knowledge of that.
Okay, but all I'm trying to get at the moment, sir, is knowing that there was a rape and knowing that the victim of that rape was in the hospital and knowing the general procedure of your department, you would have generally expected there to be a woman there. True?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, yeah.
And so if somebody, whether it's Beck, whether it's the sheriff, whether it's Couchet, that mentions the name Judy Dvorak, that wouldn't be a big surprise to you.
No,
Okay.
no.
Now, one of Judy Dvorak's functions, by the way, do you know, was she a full-time deputy then or a part-time deputy? Do you know?
Boy, I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Well, whatever. One of her functions was evidence collection, correct?
Mr. Gabelli, objection, no foundation.
Miss Doyle,
You
you can answer if you know.
Well, there again, I was going to also add on, she might have been a matron, but I don't know if she was a matron that night.
okay?
But I'm sure specific orders could have been given to her regarding the collection of evidence, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm sure she would have been given quick instructions as what to do. Plus, there was a hospital staff in there to probably assist her on that. I don't know. That's just my,
Sure.
yeah.
And one of the things that happens in certain kinds of crime investigations, including sexual assaults, is that if a victim is placed on a piece of furniture that has a sheet over it, there's an effort made to collect the sheet
Collect the sheet. Yeah.
in order to collect hair.
That's the way it should be done. Yeah.
Do you know, by the way, that but for the hairs that were collected in that sheet, Stephen Avery would still be in a prison cell?
Mr. Bascom, object to the form.
Mr. Mayor, yeah. Miss Doyle, I join. Mr. Mayor, and to relevancy?
I have no idea what I know it was a DNA type thing
Do you know it was DNA or hair?
on here.
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
Uh,
sorry.
yeah, DNA
that's
on
okay.
Do you
hair.
know it was DNA on hair?
The question you asked was, did I know this,
Right.
that she,
Do you know it today?
oh, yeah, yeah.
Today, do you know the hair was collected?
Well, the samples, semen samples, the whole works,
Reporter, I'm sorry, did you say blood?
and semen samples.
Thank you.
And of course, the combings. And that's another reason you probably would want a female deputy in there to do that.
Well, sure.
Otherwise, the nurses would do that or the doctor.
And when you're describing Judy Dvorak as gathering sheets, you're talking about bedding sheets
Yeah,
as opposed to sheets of paper.
I assume she was doing that.
Mr. Gabelli, objection.
Miss Doyle, just wait until he's done with the question before you start.
Mr. Gabelli, just a minute. Objection, no foundation.
Again, sir?
Let's try it again. When you say that Judy Dvorak was collecting sheets, you mean that she was collecting bedding sheets, not sheets of paper, correct?
Mr. Gabelli, objection.
No, yeah, bedding sheets.
Mr. Gabelli, objection, no foundation.
Miss Doyle, just wait. I will join.
You're allowed to answer.
Okay. I would say she was collecting anything that Penny was laying on, sitting on, even maybe her pillowcases, anything that was any type of sheets on the equipment that may produce evidence.
Sure. And that was her job, correct?
Mr. Gabelli, objection, no foundation.
Miss Doyle, join. Mr. Mayor, yeah, if he knows. Miss Doyle, you can answer.
You're allowed to answer.
Again, that would have been my assumption, would have been her job. That's why she was in there,
And that's what she was doing that night.
to collect evidence and to preserve the evidence and to work with the doctors and nurses, not, to get this evidence. That should have been her job.
And that is, in fact, what she was doing that night.
I would say so.
Mr. Gabelli, objection.
Miss Doyle, objection.
Mr. Gabelli, no foundation.
Miss Doyle, I join.
Mr. Gabelli, you have to let us object, sir.
Miss Doyle, yeah, just
And you have to let me finish my question, counsel.
Mr. Cavalli, well, I thought you were done.
I hadn't.
Miss Doyle, he was starting to answer, so we had to get,
Mr. Cavalli, I apologize.
Let's try it again.
Okay.
That was the function that she was performing that night, according to what the sheriff had told you, correct?
Mr. Mayor, objection.
Mr. Cavalli, objection, no foundation.
Miss Doyle, I will join.
Reporter, I have no idea what you said.
Mr. Mayor, I said objection, if you know. Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Can I answer now?
Yes.
It's so bad. It's terrible. It's absolutely awful.
My
Oh,
God.
jeez.
I'm just trying not to laugh.
I know. It's just these games that these other lawyers were playing to interrupt the flow of the conversation because they didn't want him to
Yeah,
answer. They wanted to confuse
they
the.
don't want him. Yeah. Man, you can just feel the objections coming up when the question gets posed.
Absolutely.
Oh,
All right, line 10.
okay. Line
Continue
10.
on.
The sheriff didn't tell me what her actions were or her orders. I'm assuming that again, that she was in there because of the female thing, female thing, and collecting evidence, which I'm sure Judy Dvorak was capable of doing.
Fine.
Yeah, okay.
And now, having collected that evidence, she needed to take the evidence to the crime lab, correct?
Right, right.
And that's what you were asked to do. Well, asked. That's what you were told to do the next morning, correct?
Yes, yes.
Can you give me an approximation of the time of day that you first arrived at the hospital?
Okay. I would say it was light out yet. It was, of course, July. It would be. And I would say maybe 6:30 maybe, somewhere in there.
And do you know what time it was when you left approximately?
Oh, I must have left between 9 and 10, maybe a little later.
Did you leave immediately after the sheriff told you to be back at 7 o'clock in the morning?
Yes.
And when you left, do you recall seeing anybody well, anybody else in the hospital that was not in the emergency room area that you've been describing?
Boy, I can't recall that.
Do you know who was left behind when you left the hospital based on your observations? And the sheriff was there?
I left before the sheriff. I have no idea where Couché was, if he had left or what. I had no idea. I would imagine Judy Dvorak would have been there yet, but I didn't see her.
Okay. Anyone else?
No.
Okay. At the time that, well, as we've already established that you don't know for certain the order in which Couché and or Kolanczyk went into the emergency room, right? You're just not sure of that.
No, I'm not sure of seeing Couché actually go in ahead of the sheriff.
Okay. But at the time that, well, did you see Kolanczyk come out of the room?
Yes. Yeah.
So at least you know at some point he was in.
Oh, yeah, he was in there. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any idea of who else was in the emergency room during the times that, let's say, from the point when Couché makes a comment about wanting to do his composite first, and the time that you see Kolanczyk come out of the room?
Well, Judy Dvorak was in there.
Okay.
The victim, I believe a doctor, a couple of nurses.
Do you know if the victim's husband, Tom, was in there?
I didn't see Tom at all that night.
Okay. And you yourself didn't go into the emergency room, right?
When I arrived, they were already in there.
Okay.
And I mean, when they came out, I didn't notice that much except the sheriff, but I didn't even know when Couché left.
Okay. Let me talk to you. Go off the record for a second.
Mr. Covelli, why don't we take a break? Reporter off the record, and looks like they took a break from 10:45 to 10:54. We're back on the record.
Mr. Kolanczyk, during the recess, I gave you 3 sheets of paper, which have numbers in the lower right-hand corner, 005514, 15, and 16. Is that correct?
Yeah, right. Yes.
And those 3 pages are now stapled together, and there is an exhibit sticker placed on the first page of 5514.
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell us what exhibit number that is?
It's 928405, the date.
All right. You may recall that earlier in your deposition, there were times when I said that if you wanted to look at a report to help refresh your recollection,
Yeah.
you could do that. And we're nearing the end of your deposition, so I want to give you the chance to look at that. Let me invite your attention, please, to the second page, 5515,
Yep.
and to the first full paragraph that begins, quote, while Kolanczyk was still at the hospital, end quote. Do you see that one?
Yeah.
And in particular, to the last sentence of that paragraph. Can you read that into the record, please?
Okay. The whole paragraph?
Just the last sentence.
Okay. Kolanczyk.
I'm sorry. Let me withdraw that because I think you might as well read the whole paragraph. That'll put it in context.
Okay.
Mr. Bascom, go ahead.
Okay. Quote, while Kolanczyk was still at the hospital, Jean Couchet from the Manitowoc County Sheriff Department came to the hospital. Couchet was going to work with the victim to draw a composite picture. Kolanczyk heard Couchet state that no one should show the victim any pictures of potential suspects until the composite picture is complete. Kolanczyk then observed Couchet and Sheriff Kolanczyk go into the victim's hospital room to do the drawing, end quote.
And let me ask you, reading that, which is, first of all, the statement you gave to the state agents, correct?
Right, right.
Mr. Covelli, objection.
That, anything else?
Mr. Covelli, I'm going to object to the form
Okay,
and the foundation.
okay. That is what you said to the agents, correct?
Apparently, if it's on there, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And is that consistent with your recollection now?
Yeah. It was a lot sooner that I could recollect than it is today.
Sure.
And is it possible that I could have told them this? Yeah.
And I mean, this thing was prepared 2 years earlier than we are now, correct?
Oh, yeah, yeah. And like I said, I never saw this one before.
Sure. Okay. But having seen it now, is it your recollection that you observed Cachet and Kolanczyk go into the hospital room to do the drawing?
Right now, when you asked me that question at first, I couldn't.
Yeah, sure. Kosarik's sitting right there watching you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
don't want to tell on the boss here because yeah, he's not a good
Uh-huh.
he's
Yeah.
not a good man.
Yep.
Line
Oh,
13.
Line 13.
13. But if I already mentioned this on this report, Exhibit 92, I would say this is very possible it could have happened, yes.
Okay. Now, one of the things that this report also talks about is, again, your awareness of the fact that Steve Avery was considered a suspect. Do you see that on the same page, a few paragraphs down? The paragraph begins, quote, Kolanczyk was asked if he knew that Stephen Avery was considered a suspect, end quote. It's about, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs down.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. I know the one you're talking about here. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And that's, again, that's consistent with your recollection, isn't it? that is that you heard while you were at the hospital that Steve Avery was considered a suspect.
Yeah. Well, I did mention that I heard it, but I don't know from who.
Sure, I understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all I'm trying to do is just show you
Yeah.
that that's pretty much what you were saying to the agents.
Yeah.
Then at the same time, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, one of the other things that happened in connection with your coming into this deposition is that you were given a subpoena. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And that subpoena had an attachment asking you to bring records if you had them.
I had nothing.
Okay. And that's what I'm just going to ask you now. You went over the attachment to the subpoena and read it.
Yes. Yes.
And when you read it, you realized what was requested by the subpoena to the attachment.
Yes.
Then you also realized that you did not have any of the materials that the attachment and the subpoena call for. Is that a fair statement?
That's right. I never even saw the report on this case
Okay.
until I did see some excerpts of it that I asked about a little while back, but I did not see at the time, like I put at the bottom here, I was not in the loop. I was just told what to do and did it, and that was it.
I gather that. I mean, you were told to come to the hospital. You did.
Yeah.
You were told to stick around at the hospital. You did.
Yeah.
You were told to leave the hospital. You did. You were told to come back the next morning to deal with stuff going to the crime lab.
Yeah.
But you got directed differently the next morning, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and I'm not going to go into all that.
Okay. I was not directed to leave the hospital. I was directed to come in, but I stayed on my own to try to make sure that nothing would pop up that required some help or whatever.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
And I mean, the point is that you did not consider yourself to be running this investigation, correct?
Absolutely not.
You were simply doing what you were told to do by others, in particular the sheriff.
Yes.
Now, you've said on more than one occasion that there are theories that you've had about this case. Is that correct?
Well, yeah. I guess it's not unnatural to have that.
Sure.
Reporter, I'm sorry. I guess it's
Unnatural to have that?
It's natural to have that. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, natural. I'm sorry. It's natural to have that theories. I think people have theories about anything you talk about.
Sure. And your theories, though, are based not just on your observations, but also on a quarter century of experience as a law enforcement officer, correct?
Partly, yeah. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, you've been in city law enforcement,
Yeah.
in jail law enforcement, in county law enforcement for a long time, right?
Right. Right.
Now, one of the things that you'll see in the exhibit that's before you is if I can just reach over and point, in the thicker paragraph near the bottom of the page,
Okay.
a reference to your not understanding what Avery would have been doing in the location where the sexual assault occurred, and saying that the place where the assault took place was not a place where Avery would have been. And so you had doubts as to whether or not Avery actually committed the crime. Is that what you, in fact, told these agents as they recorded in their report?
I wasn't.
Scavelli. Excuse me, sir. Objection. Forum foundation. Like foundation. Go ahead.
I think I told them something about that because Mr. Avery had somewhat of a reputation of being in trouble now and then. And I guess I really wasn't the only one that thought, well, what was he doing up there? It didn't make sense that much. But that's, you never know. he could have been up there
Sure.
and whatever, but it just didn't make sense at the time. So it was hard to understand that.
Okay. Were there other theories that you had as to this investigation?
Mr. Covelli, objection, foundation and form. Mr. Bascom, object to the form.
Mr. Mayor, yeah, and also relevancy. Go ahead. Ms. Doyle, join.
You're allowed to answer.
Well, there again, I wasn't there. I can't swear to any of this.
Sure.
Well, I can swear to it, but I did have some questions about the lineup, the picture lineup. I don't know. I wasn't in there, but there is such a thing as that you can direct certain things by the way you say it or do it or whatever. Does that make sense?
Sure. That's what we were talking about before.
I mean, think it's a possibility, and that was my main thing. And of course, if it starts out as in that case, it would really take over the complete case.
Did it appear to you that the focus on Stephen Avery was pretty quick in this case?
Yes.
Did it appear at any time that any other suspect was seriously considered in this case?
Mr. Covelli, objection, no foundation.
Ms.
Of course.
Doyle, join. Mayor, yeah, he wasn't involved.
You're allowed to answer.
Reporter, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
The only one
Mayor, he wasn't involved.
heard of, there was some guy in Two Rivers that the name came up. I don't know who the guy was that maybe looked like Avery.
Do you know the name Gregory Allan in connection with this case?
I do now, yeah.
Do you recall ever hearing that name raised in connection with this case?
Yes. It was either a call placed to a jailer or a call placed to the city or somebody that they called, but I think it was Brown County called and saying that we may have your suspect up here. And I guess supposedly the sheriff made the remark, quote, "No, we have our man," end quote. I can't tell you where I heard it, when I heard it, but that's something I just heard.
Sure.
You know.
Sure. That's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
I was
is.
gonna break right here at line 16.
Uh-huh.
So when did he
Yeah.
retired in 91, 92? So when did this come up?
Right.
I'm sure he still talked to some of his pals at the sheriff's office from time to time after he retired.
Right.
So where the hell did this come up?
Yeah. Yeah,
Interesting.
that's really interesting.
Well,
Was that in Peg's report at all? That mentioned?
about the call?
Uh-huh.
No, I don't think so. I don't
No,
remember
I don't.
verbatim.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just was going to say, I don't remember any specifics. She just kind of a lack of communication. That was
Yeah.
pretty much all she said that I remember anyway.
Yeah, I think they intentionally left that part out of the of her statement that she gave.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He was pretty specific there, though. Got a call from somebody from Brown County. Said we got
Yeah.
somebody up here, and Sheriff says no, we got our man.
No. Well, and I thought it was interesting that he remembers that Brown County call when who was it, Glenn or Kelly said mentioned Gregory Allen's name, and then he went into that whole Brown County call, and as far as I've ever known, Gregory Allen's name was never mentioned by Andy
That's
in that
exactly
call.
that's exactly right.
You know
That's
what?
exact. That's exactly correct. You described it
But
perfectly.
this man who seems to be on the level, like not involved at all, it connected those two things, Brown County and Gregory Allen's name. So that's
Uh-huh.
kind of interesting to me.
I can't remember. Yeah, it is interesting. And I have to wonder, even back at the time, I have to wonder if, and we'll never know, if Couchet made a phone call to this Allan Kolanczyk. Maybe there'll be something a little bit later in this deposition that will answer that. But I have to wonder because it is a fact that Couchet did interview. I'm going to get these names wrong. I know one of them was Nicholson. He interviewed 3 detectives or officers, whatever, in 1996. Couchet did, and it was surrounding, kind of this. I can't remember. I don't remember if the actual thing came up where they said, well, Coburn got this call, but it was around that, definitely. So, but
Mm-hmm.
I just have to wonder if Couchet called this Kolanczyk by phone and just, I don't know. I'm going out there on a limb
Possibly.
now. Well, I'm going down on a
Yeah.
limb here. That's pretty far speculation. I can't prove that, but uh, I definitely feel like that there was a whole lot more involved off the off the record that they were doing in the department with that phone call than what we'll ever know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, hey, I
Yeah.
want to welcome TTM Fangirl. I see she's joined us. Thanks for coming.
Woohoo!
Yeah,
Hey, TTM.
she generously gifted a bunch of people here not long ago with a sub to the channel. We really appreciate that. That was really generous of you to do that. I'm trying to.
Memberships. Yep.
Yep, I was trying to see if there was any other people that have joined. I don't see anyone else. So
Jazz Gaming has popped in.
hey,
Hey, Jazz.
Jazz. Woo! Pretty late for Jazzy, but hey, he likes to stay
Yeah.
up late. He's a night owl. That's okay. That's all good.
Yeah.
All right.
Rumor has it. I think rumor has it has recently
Yep. Rumor
popped
has
in.
it's in there. I just saw that too.
Hey, rumor has it. Awesome.
Yeah, I think rumor has it had asked about. I think it was rumor, wasn't it? Rumor was the one that asked about how to join, get a subscription. I hope
I
somebody
believe
helped.
so.
And hopefully,
Yeah.
Catnip, and Rhonda helped her get to where she needs to go. And I know you can do it during the live. That button is right there.
Yeah.
But when we're not live, you have to dig a little to find the join button. So hopefully they done that. And if you've done so, again, we really appreciate you doing that. Every little bit helps, right? So,
Yep.
alrighty, let's continue on. I think where we at on line 18, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
You don't I didn't come up with it, but I just heard someone say that.
Okay.
And I don't
Somebody in law enforcement said that to you?
it was either a city police officer or somebody in our department who heard it from somebody. I don't know. One of those things. So it was like double or triple hearsay.
Sure.
I think in a criminal case, I just swear I just now saw that. I think in a criminal case it would be called hearsay.
Yeah. Okay.
But those are things you heard.
And I mean, in the Manitowoc area during the time that you were there, it wasn't uncommon for police officers and sheriffs to interact on cases of common interest, was it?
That's the way you exist sometimes.
Sure.
You have to have the help from the outside, actually from the public too. But you have to work together on this stuff.
I mean, you don't draw a line and say, quote, well, I'm sorry, you're not a member of my department, so I don't want to hear what you have to say about a case, end quote, do you?
Mr. Mayor, form of the question, incomplete hypothetical. Miss Doyle, you can answer.
Well, yeah, in today's world, even back then already, there was more communication between officers. Some of these were, this is mine, you know,
Sure.
and, but they, I think generally overall, they work together. Yeah.
That's not what Peg said. And so, as a consequence of your talking to city police officers, to other members of the sheriff's department, you're not able today, right now, to identify who told you the information.
No, it was just one of those.
All you know is that you heard it.
I heard it. Yeah.
Okay, that's fair enough. And I take it that you'd have a hard time putting a date on that, too.
Not a date, but a time.
Or a time, maybe?
Because the thing was, things were moving along, I guess. Like I says, I didn't see any of the report at the time. Things were moving along, and it was substantiated that Stephen Avery was a suspect by whoever.
Uh-huh.
And but then these things come drifting in a little bit, you know, and but at that time, I can't say. It would have to have been after July. I think it would have been before. When was this court case?
Well, I don't know if I'm
6 months later?
allowed to give you information, but
Well, I know you know. Well, it should have been public record,
sure, it is.
but I don't remember either. It's got to be in there someplace. Wow.
Sure. Okay.
Okay.
I mean, if I were to say late fall
Yeah.
of 85 and sentencing in March of 86, I mean, somewhere in that range.
Before the goings on occurs, shall we say? Okay.
Before the court trial?
Yeah.
I'm confused. What are they talking about here?
I don't know.
Well, I think he's talking about information that he had heard here or there, and it was before the court trial.
I
But
mean, they were talking about the Brown County call, and
uh-huh.
so I don't know
I think
where we
that's what
are now.
I think that's what he's talking about, and things moving along rather quickly in, just in his mindset. But he's kind of vague. It's like his memories, it was,
I
20 years
mean, Brown
before.
Brown County didn't happen till 95 or
Correct.
96,
That's correct.
Mhm.
and he's talking about 86.
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's a little confusing,
Yeah,
but I think that there's it's almost like he's saying that he heard stuff before the trial here and there. But that's kind of what I'm gathering from it.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Let me just ask a couple more general questions here. Given your experience in that department and your time working in that department, are you able to identify any other cases in which Sheriff Kolanczyk had taken the lead of the investigation prior to the Penny Bjornson case?
not right offhand, but I would say there's something of he would not take the lead, but he would be definitely into it. I mean, as far as that goes, in more of a senior, not a senior, but a super type of a crime or something, he definitely would be involved in it in some way, but he wouldn't have the lead.
And was it your experience that someone like, let's say, Don Bells, for example, who held a rank that would allow him to be in charge of detectives, would be more ordinarily lead an investigation?
Well, it depends on, again, the seriousness of the investigation.
Sure.
Generally, the way it works, if there'd be a burglary or something, patrol officers would get there first to check the scene, make sure there's nobody in there anymore, and guard the scene. And then they would send one or two detectives out there, and they basically would become the head people there if unless the sheriff would come along and say, "Hey, I think we should have this done. He'd come up with the suggestions, or he would say, I want this done or that done. Well, he's the boss.
Sure.
But generally a guy would be assigned that, or two guys would be assigned that. Yeah.
As opposed to the sheriff doing it himself, you mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right.
Okay. That's all I have, sir. Thank you very much.
Hmm.
That's all the questions I have. I don't know if anybody else has questions.
Reporter, let's go off the record briefly. Okay, less than a minute. We're back on the record. Mr. Govelli? Okay, we got crossed by Mr. Govelli. Good morning.
Good morning.
You have Exhibit 92 there in front of you.
Right.
You didn't type that up, right?
No. No.
You didn't dictate those words that are in this report. True?
Like I says, I did not receive a report, and they must have gathered up the information and made a report out.
And they didn't show you that report and ask you to approve it within days of you talking to them, right?
No.
Ms. Doyle, is that correct?
Mr. Govelli, is that correct?
That's right.
All right. And for the first time you saw this was today.
Right.
And do you remember when you talked to those people?
Yeah. Two young ladies came one day, and I don't know their names or anything. Their cards are someplace at home, and they spent about an hour or so there, at the house.
And as you,
But I can't tell you a date on that.
nor can you tell us exactly what words you said to them when you met with them back then. True? It's been over a year now.
Well, not word for word.
Now, you'd mentioned something about hearing a rumor about some law enforcement from Brown County saying they may have the perpetrator in the Penny Bearson's assault. Do you remember that?
Yeah, could have been, and
Was it your understanding that when they said that they had the person, that person was in custody in Brown County?
believe it was for a similar crime.
Okay. Might this have been in 1985 or 1995 that you heard this rumor? That's when this occurred?
There's a possibility. Yeah.
Okay. So it may have been a decade after the trial, right?
Yeah. Well, at my age, decades are weeks.
I know the feeling well. The years
That's
go
funny.
by. Yeah, the years go by like a picket fence.
Oh, unbelievable.
And you've been asked a lot of questions today about the events
Yeah.
that occurred 20 years ago, correct?
Yes.
And some of your answers you gave, I think you indicated you assumed, and you were kind of surmising what you think maybe should have occurred if things went the way you thought, right?
Well, I think they were asking what some of the procedures were,
Okay.
and
For,
that would have been procedure.
for example, you weren't present when anyone gave Ms. Deputy Dvorak instructions as to what she was or was not to do, correct?
Correct. Yeah. But
Excuse me. I'm going to object to form on the grounds of leading questions.
Were you present when anyone gave Deputy Dvorak her instructions as to what she was to do on July 29, 1985?
no,
Did you ever see her that evening?
no. I think when they all came out, she was still gathering evidence.
Did she ever speak to you that evening?
I don't recall.
Did anyone ever tell you what her instructions were?
No,
Okay.
no.
Now, is it, and I want to make sure I understand your testimony, is it your testimony that when you leave the hospital that evening, July 29, 1985, around 9 or 10 o'clock, that Miss Bernstein was still in the emergency room?
That I can't tell you. She could have been taken to a room.
Okay.
I don't know.
Could the sheriff have been coming out of her room rather than the emergency room when you saw him leave the room, as you testified earlier?
No, that was the emergency room. Definitely the emergency room.
Do you remember, as you sit here today, not what you think should have occurred or might have occurred, but but do you actually, as you sit here today, remember Ms. Bernstein being in the hospital room rather than the emergency room while you were there?
No.
If you look at Exhibit 92, second page, first full paragraph, last sentence, it says that you then observed Couchet and Sheriff Kosarik go into the victim's hospital room to do the drawing. Did I read that correctly?
That could have been. That could have been. Uh, oh,
Just
oh,
finish
that
line
could
one.
have been.
Just finish
Yeah,
line one.
remembered at this time, but I didn't remember it now.
Okay, but as you sit here today, and this is what I really want to know. As you sit here today, do you actually presently have a memory as to what room they came out? What Couchet and
Touche?
the sheriff, excuse me, went into to do the composite?
It definitely had to be the emergency room. That's where they were all working in there. In fact, the sheriff was waiting to go in and they were working on her.
Okay, but here's my question, sir. You just told me what you think it had to be.
Mr. Kelly, no. I object, Mr. Cavelli. He answered your question.
That's a speaking correction, isn't it?
Objection.
Yeah, that's a speaking objection, isn't it, Mr. Bascom? My goodness.
Mr. Kelly, you're the one who's making the speech, not the witness.
Mr. Cavalli, that's another speaking objection. Okay.
Wow.
Now let me just make sure. What I want to know is, as you sit here today, do you have an actual memory in your mind's eye or seeing that what room these two people went into to do the composite?
Mr. Kelly, objection. Asked and answered.
Mr. Cavalli, you may answer.
Well, she wasn't in the garage. She was in the emergency room. When people came out of there, doctors, nurses came out, sheriff came out. That's an emergency room. That wasn't a private room.
So when you left the hospital, that's where she was?
I don't know. They may have moved her out another door to a room. I have no idea. I didn't go in there. I wouldn't have been allowed in there. But it just again assumed that she was still in there or moved to a different room. Chances are she was probably moved to a different room already. I don't know. Some of these some of these things that you claim I assume, it's things that I don't want to say taken for granted, but this would be the procedure they would do.
Okay.
And Judy Dvorak was collecting evidence.
So when you leave the hospital, you don't know where Penny Bernstein is, whether she's in the emergency room or some other room in the hospital.
No, no.
Mr. Cavalli, that's all I have. Thank you. Now we got Mr. Bascom. I have a couple of questions. So we've got Bascom on cross. Earlier in your testimony, in response to some questions about your theories, you talked about the photo array. Do you remember that testimony?
Yeah,
I just want to make sure that I'm clear about what you recall from that night. Did you ever see the photographs that were delivered by the jailer? I don't mean in a stack, but did you see the actual pictures of the people that were on those photographs?
no.
Did you ever see the photo array that was put together and shown to the victim?
No,
So you don't have any evidence.
no,
Let me finish my question.
I know.
You don't have any evidence that would lead you to conclude that something was improper with the photo array. True?
That's true.
Okay, that's all I have.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I have just a few.
Oh, okay. Off the record, just briefly. And it looks like they took a minute. They're back on the record.
Thank you. Now, earlier in response to question from Mr. Glenn, you said the sheriff was already there, so he was number one. When you said he was number one, you meant that he's in charge of the investigation
Well, yeah.
because he's the first one there?
He was there and he was also the boss.
Well, and it's usually the first detective that arrives that takes over a case. Is that fair?
Well, I would say, well, he was the first one there, and I certainly wasn't given the reins.
Okay.
So he took it over, and he's the boss.
And this was a larger or more significant case. Is that fair?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so it was more unusual. It was a more unusual case because of the seriousness of the case. Fair?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay, and you said he appeared irritated or angry, and was it your impression that's because he couldn't get a hold of some other detectives earlier
Yeah.
based on the dispatch?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, like the dispatcher said, she says, okay, I'm glad I could get a hold of you. She says, nobody else is answering their phones and nobody's around.
Okay,
And so I'm trying to explain to the sheriff that, hey, but I can see he might have been irritated on that too. Yeah.
okay.
Okay. I would have been.
You said you would have been irritated?
If I was the sheriff, yeah.
Okay, I appreciate your candor, sir.
Not at any guy that came in, but the guys that weren't available, and they probably should have been.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Glenn?
You still have Exhibit 92 in front of you?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. We had a recess during which you read that document, correct?
Okay, yeah.
And when you read that document, you didn't see anything in there that you thought was just dead wrong, correct?
Mr. Gravelli, objection to the form. God, we can't have that.
You're allowed to answer.
Mr. Bascom, you can answer.
Miss Doyle, you can answer.
Okay. Not what we've covered.
That's what I'm talking about. In the materials that we have talked about.
Okay, yeah. I did let's see, now where was it? Something about the crime lab. I was trying to think about this crime lab because I was supposed to go in that morning.
Sure. Let me interrupt because I didn't go into the crime lab stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't even care about that.
Okay, fine. Then that's the only thing. It's when I skimmed over it, I think it's very accurate. Yeah.
Okay. And you don't have any reason to believe that the two Justice Department agents that interviewed you would be lying in their report as to what you said, do you?
Bascom, objection to the form. Go ahead.
Oh,
We have to make an objection for the record.
yeah, I know. They didn't print anything that I didn't say except for the back page, but we didn't cover that. So,
Okay.
I never got a report, and I wish I could have seen it and signed it so I can, well,
Sure. And you know that some law enforcement agencies do that. That is when they take a statement
yeah,
from somebody. They give a copy to the witness, right?
well, they should. Well, they didn't have it typed yet.
Sure. And then there are other law enforcement agencies that don't do it that way, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, I take it you don't suggest here that somehow you were treated differently from the other witnesses that they spoke to.
Mr. Bascom, objection to the form lacks foundation.
Hard to say. Wasn't sworn at or anything. I mean,
Sure.
they were very nice people, no problem.
Okay.
Okay.
And then you were asked a bunch of questions about the difference between the hospital room and the emergency room. Do you recall those?
Yeah. Yep. Right.
I take it, sir, that you, because you never went into the emergency room, don't know whether there were hallways or routes from the emergency room to an individual patient's hospital room, correct?
No idea. I have no idea. No.
And so when you say that you're not sure that somebody was in a hospital room as opposed to an emergency room, it's because you don't have any way of knowing. Is that right?
That's right. And I didn't see anybody being wheeled out. I don't recall that.
Right.
That would help. I don't know.
Right. And all that you know is that the doors that you saw Mr. Kolanczyk coming out of when he told you to be around at 7 o'clock the next morning were the emergency room doors.
Right.
Okay, that's all. Thanks.
Line 20, Rhonda.
That's it. That's it now?
Miss Doyle, that's it.
Reporter, okay. Being no further questions, this deposition is concluded at 11:27 a.m. off the record. And then, of course, we've got the index there, as you can see. So, well done, ladies.
Awesome.
Yeah, well done.
Thank
I
That was
think
interesting.
it was interesting. And you know,
Mhm.
Kolanczyk, to me, he didn't really pull any punches. I think his memory was a little wonky,
Yeah.
but it sure sounded to me like that when he talked to Amy Lehman and Deb Strauss, that he was more clear. And he even stood up to one of these other lawyers, these state lawyers, who the hell it was. No, that wasn't a regular room. That was the ER room, an emergency room. He really tried to get him to
Yeah.
change that. He wanted him to
Yeah.
not that. So you got to wonder what happened after the fact. I do, because if Kolanczyk was there and heard that, he had to know. His name was on the deposition list coming up a few months later.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Kolanczyk was probably, his balls were probably sweating pretty hard at that point.
I would imagine so.
According to
Enough
what
to
I
murder?
found,
What's that, Cherie?
I said, according to what I found, I believe Mr. Kolanczyk died, but it was less than 2 years later. It was in 2007.
Yeah. He
And
was
he was
pretty.
fairly young.
Yeah. Well, he was 69.
He was
said.
69 when he did this
Yeah.
testimony. I mean, not young, but I don't know. My mom was barely
71.
74. Yeah, and I felt like my mom was still kind of young at her age, so
Well, he might have had a lot of
I
miles
feel
on
like,
him. You never know.
yeah, yeah.
So many things.
People
Anyway,
die at all ages.
Yeah.
I know.
So many outward things impact so much that I think about
I know.
Irakozy and how young that man was, and
Yeah,
Yeah.
such a tragic young
absolutely.
age. Well, all right. So I'm glad we got this one in the books. It was I think, a very good and interesting, especially about the hospital and Kolanczyk. They even questioned there at the end about, you know, about Kolanczyk and, who's the lead detective. It's always the one that's out there first. That's not true.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
absolutely not true. A detective could get called in that is the only one that they could get a hold of, and he responds. But in fact, somebody else is up due on the rotation, and that case gets handed off to them. So,
Yep.
but Kolanczyk taking charge in this is, we know this is true. He did take charge. He ran the investigation. There's no doubt about it.
He sure did. And everybody thought that was weird
Absolutely.
because he'd never really done it before. That's what most people said, as I recall.
That's right. Now, and we're not going to read this because it's already, this next one's, it's 80 pages, so we're not going to start it tonight because it's already going on 9 o'clock. So, but I'm going to pull it up just briefly. We'll take a look at who this guy is. It's going to pop in there. This is Leo Jadowski. And as you can see, his interview started right after Kolanczyk. And let's see if everybody is still the same. I suspect it will be.
In the meantime, everybody say hello to Sunshine Christina's just jumped on the panel.
Sunshine!
Oh, Sunshine!
What the hell?
Hello, darling.
I'm hoping. Yeah, I had a few minutes, and then I saw y'all were live, and then I saw it was the depositions, and
Piqued your interest?
Hi, everybody.
Piqued your interest?
Y'all.
Piqued your interest?
We were just talking about Gregory Allan a little bit.
Yeah. Of course, it piques my interest. This case, it gets under your skin, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
I have that's what I love about us going over all this stuff. There's always something new to be gleaned, right? And I noticed that, I don't know if it was Glenn or Kelly that was doing the last interview of Jadowski, right? But you notice how he was very adamant to make sure to get onto the record that they had, whoever it was, I'm pretty sure it was Kolanczyk, that he showed up at the emergency room.
Yes.
Like, you talked to him at the emergency room. Because I think Kolanczyk tried to put onto the record that he came up later. She was already in her hospital room.
Yeah.
But in fact, I never caught that. I don't know if y'all discussed it, but I find that interesting. I think that was going to come back to bite him. He had to have been scared. Well, maybe not scared. Maybe pissed.
Yeah, go ahead. By this time, absolutely. I think he was scared, and just like Susan said, I bet his balls were sweating.
Yeah, or he was just very angry that this didn't just go away, that he didn't get what he wanted. It's hard to tell with him. He's such a... He's very... he's hard to read. The little bit of video we have of him, he's very hard to read.
He's definitely not a good and
That's
decent
because
man.
he's one person on the outside and a completely different man inside that brain of his. That is my belief.
Absolutely.
Yep, I agree. I think his biggest tell is he has those shark eyes, those dead eyes. Like he's a very, to look at him in the little bit of video we have of him, he's the shell of an upstanding, retired, church going, very a good guy. But when you look at
upstanding citizen.
when you look at his eyes, there's nothing there.
Kind of
Nothing there.
like kind of like Murdoch, the Murdoch case. That guy's just a
Oh,
shell.
yeah.
You look
Yeah.
at him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not that way because he just did too many drugs. You know, I think he probably spent $1 million on Xanax alone. And
Well,
you cannot that much Xanax
If
and have it fry your
well,
brain.
he was a
but was
master.
that true? You
Yeah,
know,
he
was
was a
that even
master.
true? We
He was
don't know.
he was a master, expert, professional liar. Had been for
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Oh my
And
God.
you're
Yeah.
right. Susan, we don't know, but I do know that if his claims of spending millions of dollars on pills and drugs, if he was stealing money from people, it would have been very easy to drop that much money because it was probably not only drugs, it was also that life, right? So he was
Well,
probably visiting the strip clubs,
Gambling.
taking the services of escort, and then gambling. Oh yeah, big time gambling, and then
Yeah.
flashing that money and being Mr. Big Shot, right? So he was paying the escorts rent. He was probably just being very, very free with other people's money. Now, here's something interesting about this case. I haven't looked into it about the Murdoch case. Now, the best friend of his son that was killed in that boating accident,
Uh-huh.
there I hate to even say this on the air. But there may have been a romantic relationship between the son and the best friend.
possibly.
The one that was killed, or
Paul.
Yes.
are you talking about the older son?
The one that caused the accident that killed his best
Oh.
friend.
That's Paul.
They've been best friends.
Oh.
Or they may have been best
Huh.
friends with benefits.
Hmm.
I read that
Fine.
somewhere. There was
Okay.
somebody was speculating. Again, yeah, you're right. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say a friend of mine watched a video that really got into the nuts and bolts of the case. Her words, not mine. I haven't watched the video, but that was a speculation. And I was just thinking if that was true and that ever got out in that town where, yeah, he would not have taken that well. And plus,
Oh,
he was just, I don't know. Oh, and then Mystic Jinx. Hello everyone in the audience, and hello all y'all again. Mystic Jinx said that Convicting sold.
Yep,
It did.
it did.
So we have a release date.
What's the name of that company?
Daily
We
something. Daily.
um,
Hold on, I'll tell you.
Daily Wire.
Plus.
The Daily Wire Plus.
Huh.
They've got a
Inter-
streaming service that I didn't know about until now, or just recently. We found out that it is sold. Daily.
Mhm.
It's the Plus is their streaming service. They've got about 1 million subscribers. It's
Okay.
They're a news channel.
Yeah, they're a right wing.
Daily Wire.
Yeah, they're right side of the aisle news service. Ben Shapiro's on there and some others. And then of course Candace Owens is going to be the narrator, which, you know,
What?
as I said the other night, we did a live the other night, Friday night. I really thought Brenda Shearer was going to be the narrator, you know, between scenes and so forth. But apparently Candace Owens, she's part of that organization as well. And she's going to be the narrator. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, the Candace Owens.
Yep.
Yes.
Really? Now this is going to be interesting.
Check
That's
Twitter.
interesting. That's really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's already read a statement. They had a little trailer or something, and she right off the bat got it wrong. Said that Avery was a murderer.
She said that he was convicted of murder in 1985.
Yep. Absolutely wrong. Right off the bat.
Wow.
And she's getting hammered on Twitter for it too.
Well, maybe
I bet.
she's got a nose for the truth. So maybe
She's
I
kind of
can't.
she's kind of a firebrand though, and I can't believe that she's actually taken the time to really dive into the case, all of it.
I can't. Yeah, I would like to think that she wouldn't put her name on something without digging into it first. So I don't know. Let's see how it goes.
Absolutely.
I would like to think she's going to do the right thing because she's pretty vocal on things she doesn't agree with. She's not afraid of saying.
That could all be because she makes money from doing that too. You know,
Yeah. Well,
a lot of them are doing that.
This will tell the tale, won't it?
Yep.
How
Sure will.
This will forever solidify my opinion of her because she's out there to act like she wants what's best for the citizens of America. And if she in any way thinks Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey dying in prison for crimes they didn't commit is good for America, then she's a liar. And I will stop watching any of her videos or sharing them.
Yeah, well, Ben Shapiro, he's another one that, I don't always agree with him, but he seems to be someone that he knows the material.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting to how, anything that he says comes out about this as well. So we'll see. It's supposed to be early summer, is what they're projecting as the release date. So I'm sure we're going to have a watch party, and so we can take a look at it and begin our dissection of what.
Yeah, yep. If we were going to have a party for it,
absolutely, there absolutely will be a watch party. One of us will stream it, and I'm sure that we'll get together and have our each episode will get dissected because
no, he did. Ben Shapiro did not start the Innocence Project.
No, absolutely not.
Not this Shapiro.
No, it was not Ben Shapiro. It's an attorney.
Yeah, I can't think of it.
Goldberg. Gold.
Barry, SCA
Right,
or something like that.
Yeah.
Very,
Hey,
very.
can I ask one other question that's kind of off topic?
Sure.
But it is relevant. Is Richard Glossop really going to get out?
He's scheduled for death. His death has been scheduled for May the what, Rhonda?
18th. May 18th.
I thought that I just read an article where the DA was asking for his conviction to be vacated.
He is.
He did
ask, but the Court of Appeals said nope.
Are you serious? Did y'all say they also sent Crosley Green back to prison?
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard that.
I don't recall. Yeah. I'm so frustrated right now with our Supreme Court. I don't even know where their heads are, because it surely isn't in the avenue of seeking justice for anyone at this point.
There was really good news for what's his name, Rhonda? The guy that the Supreme Court. Who?
Rodney Reed.
Yep.
Rodney Reed. Yeah, he went to the Supreme Court and they said they sent, because he wants some DNA testing done, and he had been, refused by everybody, but the Supreme Court sent it back to the lower court and said, do it.
Well,
so
I mean, good. That's good.
But it's not looking very good for Richard Glossop. His only hope now is the governor.
Yep.
Well,
he's a piece of marshmallow crap. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. If they execute him, Christina, if they
unconscionable.
It's terrible. It'd be a terrible day for our justice system.
Yeah.
Our country's in the tubes in the toilet as it is. I'm just like fed up. So was Bob Macy a part of Julius Jones?
He was still in, when did his case start?
I think
I don't think
Go-
he was a part of the case, but he was still in the DA's office.
okay, but he's definitely a part of Richard Glossop's case, correct?
Yes.
All right, that's
Bloodthirsty Bob.
yep, and I think that's the issue.
Well, Bob Macy and so was Joyce Gilchrist was a part
Yeah.
of Richard Glossop's.
God.
Yeah, and if they release him, if they vacate his sentence, I think that their concern is the lawsuits that are going to come from it, right?
Absolutely.
Because although Joyce Gilchrist, because there was no evidence, no physical evidence tying Richard Glossop to anything. It's only just word.
Justin Steed's words.
Yeah. And so
the guy that got life instead of the death penalty.
yeah,
He's the one that testified.
That's right.
the guy who there is an actual audio recording of the cop saying to him, if you don't name someone, you're gonna die for this.
That's right.
Well, it's on the Killing Richard Glossop documentary. That
Yep.
whole recorded thing is.
That is
It's just unreal. It's unreal.
But Christina,
Unconscionable.
even if the sentence was to be vacated, it wasn't it wasn't so that he could be released. It was for a new trial.
I'll
And
take
yeah, we were fine with a new
Oh,
trial
yeah.
because they have evidence that
Oh,
there
yeah.
was information withheld. And so, there's evidence of that in the last year. But it's just it's got me very sick. Physically ill.
Yeah.
It's sick. It's sickening, Rhonda. It is absolutely disgusting.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
so bad for his attorney.
Yeah.
That
I'm
has literally spent his entire career trying to right this wrong. You know what I mean? If he has to watch that man die,
Oh my God.
It'll destroy him. It'll destroy his attorney.
I mean, it'll destroy his faith in what he has spent his entire life trying to do, right? It's absolutely mind-boggling how money is more important than people's lives these days.
Money and secrets.
Well, and
Yeah.
the politics of it. Yeah, the politics has entered so heavily into our justice
It's all
system.
politics.
It's always kind of been there, but
Oh, hell yeah.
it's just now in your face now.
It's
The politics,
blatant.
it is so
Yeah.
blatant. It really is. It's so sickening. I hate
Yep.
it. And they've got to find
Yep.
some way to get that out. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
hey, anyway, let's finish this up. I wanted to notate here. This is to Jadowski's. He's the next one. Kolanczyk, and we got Jadowski. He'll be our next one that we read for whenever we schedule it. But notice that Kolanczyk left. He was there for Kolanczyk, but he left for Jadowski's.
Huh. Interesting. It's on the same day, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's 20 minutes after Kolanczyk
Immediately
gets done.
following.
That's
Yeah.
right. They took a little break, and then they, of course, we can see Exhibit 93 is the Kolanczyk interviews that they had.
He was there to intimidate.
Well, sure.
Yes, me.
Right?
What's that?
That's the only one Kolanczyk attended, correct?
No, I don't think so.
Kolanczyk, no.
Jack?
Steve and Jody were there as well, too.
I'm saying
No, but
go ahead, Susan.
no, finish your thought.
No, I'm pretty sure Kolanczyk. I feel like we looked into this. That is the only deposition Kolanczyk went to, was Kolanczyk, right?
No, I think there was a couple more that Kolanczyk went to. I can't remember which ones, but I think there was a couple more.
I know he went
I
to.
thought so.
Remember who Kolanczyk is? Was Kolanczyk the guy who ended up working in juvenile justice, like with teens?
He was a juvenile, juvenile investigator, and he was also, when he didn't have anything to do with juveniles, he was also just a regular investigator for 20 years.
Yep.
He's the one that was at the hospital that we just read.
Right. I'm trying to remember.
Kolanczyk and Cachet.
And he died right before Brendan's trial, correct?
He died
Sharita,
in July 07.
Yep.
yeah,
I'm pretty sure this is the only deposition that he went to.
you
I
could
feel
be right,
really
but
too.
you
I
could,
feel
you,
really about this, and I find it very interesting because I didn't realize Jadowski was 20 minutes after him.
Yep.
So Kolanczyk had information. Obviously, Kolanczyk knew Kolanczyk could save him or fry him. I mean, what else do you make of that? Why else would he pick
Well,
that and no?
he wanted to know what Kolanczyk was going to say, so he
absolutely.
could. Yeah, so he had that knowledge when he was deposed.
And so that ER exit or ER entrance comment in front of Kolanczyk would have let Kolanczyk know that
He was
Stephen
caught.
Avery and attorneys had it on record that what he told, because I'm pretty sure he told Strauss and what was that young girl's name?
Amy Lehman.
Yeah, Strauss and Lehman. I'm pretty sure, if I recall correctly, he told Strauss and Lehman he didn't get there until after she had been moved into a private room upstairs.
No, you're talking about Kolanczyk? No, that's not what he said.
No, I'm talking about Kolanczyk.
Oh, Kolanczyk, yeah, but that's
He-
yeah. Well, he was already there when Kolanczyk arrived at the hospital.
Exactly. So Kolanczyk pretty much shot holes in his story.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
He was pretty clear. It's Exhibit 92, which I think we've got that. I think it's buried. I think a bunch of these statements are buried in one of you weren't here, but I don't know if you remember last year when we were reading through a lot of the Colburn v. Netflix exhibits.
Uh-huh.
One of those exhibits, it's like 400 pages. It's long, and it's got a bunch of DOJ reports of these interviews.
Really?
Yes, I need to get it. It's a project that I've really kind of stuck a pin in because I kind of dread doing it, but it's got a bunch of these interviews. And I can't say
It
if
would
it's
be
all of them. I can't say
right.
if it's, but I definitely think it's at least part of these that we don't have.
It
And
would
they're
be interesting to compare them to what we've been given too.
well, Kolanczyk had talked to Amy Lehman and Deb Strauss like a year, almost 2 years prior to this deposition. So, he wasn't a young man anyway, but he was pretty clear in what he told Lehman and Strauss.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And
Anyway,
right, because I heard you say his mind he was a little scatterbrained. If I recall correctly, he died of cancer. And I think his obituary.
Christine,
Guitaring.
you're guitaring pretty bad.
He had that. And when was this interview or this death? Sorry. So August, I was saying, if I recall correctly, in his obituary, he died after a long battle with cancer. I think I'm trying to remember. It's been a couple years since I read it, but
It would have been 2 years later after this deposition.
Yeah, this was August.
That he died.
This was August 5th, 2005.
So it's likely that he was already battling the beginning stages of cancer, just not knowing it. And that is probably why and plus he had to have been nervous looking at Kolanczyk. Could you imagine? Yeah, I mean, Kolanczyk really, he's like that bully in that town. They did a movie on it in the 80s, I think, where that bully would just walk around doing whatever he wanted and nobody would ever do anything. And then at the end of the movie, everybody gets together and beats him to death and nobody saw nothing.
Yeah.
Y'all know what I'm talking about?
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Familiar?
That's Kolanczyk, right? He thinks that what he says is what he says and ain't nobody gonna stop him.
Right.
And I hats off to Kolanczyk for being as honest as he was. He had to have been terrified.
Well, I mean, he just seemed like somebody that got up there and just told what he remembered the best he could, and didn't. He
And
wasn't
if
trying
he
to.
did,
Yeah, he wasn't trying to pile on. And go ahead, Susan.
I was just going to say, if he did know he was dying of cancer, he didn't have much to lose.
No.
Yep, that's true. I was looking here for Jadowski, and it coming up for next time, and he is retired from the department, and he retired in '92. So that around the same time that Kolanczyk retired, which was he was a little vague, but it was '91 or '92 when he retired as well. So that's
Mhm.
coming up for next time. I just wanted to point that out. I'm going to turn this off.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's who's next week. I only have my grant. So my husband's finally back on the road. As much as I'm gonna miss him, it's gonna be nice to have 3 or 4 weeks of
Me,
having
me,
time.
me time.
Yes, yep. And then I've had him since October, during the week, like overnight. So I've had a 4-year-old in my house by myself unless my husband's home, and it's harder taking care of RJ with my husband here, to be honest, because my husband is just an instigator. Um, but he goes home in the middle of May. So my hope is by then I will be able to get back on spending time researching. So,
Well, that was
and
Awesome.
awesome. We miss you, Christina, but we know you had things to take
Yes.
care of. We know you had things to take care of. We understand completely.
I miss y'all too, though. I miss this case. And even though I haven't really been able to do any research, my brain is still like, I still mail out my postcards and stuff. I say that, but my brain is still always thinking about this case. Like, I
Sure.
saw something interesting about LabCorp the other day. And I found, and I can't wait to talk to y'all about that and run some theories I have about that. Uh, but yeah, I'm just bummed about Crosley Green. Now I'm bummed about Richard Glossip. I was really hoping we would have a good, something good from one of these cases. If I that really upsets me. What is our Supreme Court focusing on if it's not justice? I mean, these are cases with serious issues and serious issues that need to be litigated, and there needs to be what's that word called? There needs to be a Supreme Court ruling on these issues so that others can then have that case to cite when they're trying to get their clients out of prison. And the fact that there's not one person on the Supreme Court that thinks that wrongfully convicted inmates need to have an avenue for release is just troubling for me.
Very.
Yeah.
Mm.
Hey, before we go, as we're a little after 3 hours, but before we go, this is in relation to convicting a murderer. And I posted this the other day when we found out about the convicting is going to be aired, and I had posted this. Make sure and this is directed to Candace Owens. Make sure you do your own research. There are those that will mislead you, like this crazy call from Sipple to his captain on November 9th. And this is the call where he calls in and reports 2 5-gallon buckets of human bones, and he's wanting 40 to 60 additional officers to come in. And not only that, something else that really struck me as we again are going through these dispatch calls is that after November 8th, Manitowoc County is basically not really heard of at all. There are no reports from Manitowoc County in their summary after November 8th, after they found that key. I'm sure Kratz was like, what the fuck are you people doing? You're going to kill me. You're going to kill the case. What are you doing? So there's nothing from Manitowoc. Okay, when Simple calls in and talks to Captain Rush, the conversation really gets steered toward requesting. He wants to keep it law enforcement, but then the state troopers get brought up. But Manitowoc County's not brought up as to come over and do part of this scouring of the quarry to gather up all these bones. Manitowoc is not mentioned at all. Another thing, Christina, that I noticed is going back
Not
through these
until
calls.
March.
Not until March. Another thing I noticed in going through these calls that we got last year is that starting on November 9th, basically every call that came in, tip-wise or whatever, this is not our case, you need to talk to Calumet County. And they were doing that some prior to November 9th, but not very often. They would take the information and blah, 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 connect them with Lieutenant Syme or, Sergeant Orth or whoever was the duty captain. But at November 9th, the bulk of these calls, they are directing directly to Calumet County. They're not taking the information. It's not our case. So something happened after that key was found. I'm sure of it. Positive.
Well, yeah. What's interesting is November 9th is the bone day.
Yep.
November 9th is the day Stevens arrested. November 9th is the day before Kolanczyk's deposition. Let's see. November.
The electronic.
Huh?
Is that the night? For camera and.
Yep. Well, yeah, because it's everything. Everything's found on the 9th, right?
Yeah.
Well, the 8th and the 9th.
That
The 8th,
before.
the 8th and the
Yeah.
9th.
The 8th and the 9th.
Mm-hmm. But
And Coast Road was the 7th.
and Cusp Road was the 7th. That's what I was. Yep. That's where I was going with that. So on the 7th, they that search warrant with the blunt bloody object that isn't used, and then they direct everybody that they want involved. They're all over at Cuss Road. Hey, you know what we should do? We should do one of yours' video montages and do it on Twitter and tag Candace in it of all the activity on Cuss Road.
Absolutely.
If Teresa Hallback never left Stephen Avery's property, what is all this 2 miles away going on about?
Well, that means somebody else got killed in that quarry, and they didn't open an investigation.
It's one of two. That's right. Either someone else died or Teresa Hallback's remains were found and then moved. So one of the two. There's no other.
Christina, if you haven't had a chance, you really need to watch the dog's noses reading with the crew that Dr. Silkman and Everly have put together. It is unreal. It is unreal.
All right,
there's a lot more about the dogs that we really don't know, and he's found some really interesting stuff. Anyway, I'm going to read this comment that Alab he quoted my tweet about the November 9th phone call. Alab says, Candace, why is this call significant? It is significant because Kratz, the prosecutor, told the jury to ignore anything found away from the Avery's residence and to convict him only on what was found behind his garage. He dismissed the quarry bones as animal bones. Why? Opening up this crime scene to outside Avery's opened up the possibilities for others to have committed the crime, and they wanted Avery only. Oh, of note, these same animal bones, Prosecutor Kratz at the trial, were later given back to the victim's family by the police, not legal. Would you give deer or turkey bones to a grieving family, Candace? And Alab is exactly 100% correct.
That's right. That's right. I mean, it's spot on. There's no logical or rational or legal explanation for what they've done, what they did there, the bones, and then the fact that they gave the bones back the day after the Innocence Project was awarded. I always get the amount wrong, $500,000 or $1 million to do DNA testing on evidence for the wrongfully convicted in Wisconsin. I mean, the timing, you can't ignore that. You can't. Stephen Avery arrested the day before Kolanczyk's deposition. Teresa Halbach disappears right after Kolanczyk's deposition, where he basically, made it clear that Kolanczyk was the head honcho, what he said goes, and that he traced that friggin' his mugshot. There is nothing right about this case. I hope Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro take the time to watch Making a Murderer before they put their names on a counter documentary.
Well, their names are already attached, but as to how far they'll go in what they say, to me, they're going to have to be really careful because there's too many of us that are prepared and know this case backwards, forwards, and inside out. Kratz has made this statement, Christina, that we're going to show you evidence that makes your murderer left out. What evidence?
I've been waiting on I've started this case in 2018. I've been waiting on that almost 6 years.
Yeah, well, I've been waiting.
Still waiting.
I've been waiting since early 2016, personally, and he still hasn't produced it.
Now, I will say this: he is correct, as in there was evidence left out of Making a Murderer.
Sure.
The only issue is that all of that evidence is beneficial for showing that Stephen Avery, at minimum, was wrongfully convicted, and Brendan Dassey was horribly manipulated. His family basically stalked, targeted, and just obliterated to get him to lie. And it's not even a convincing. Once you sit down and you actually listen to his quote confessions unquote, he never really says anything. He just said his and yes in the appropriate spots. I mean, because the ridiculous narrative they got him to agree to, the evidence clearly shows that never occurred. So if he's confessing to a crime that didn't actually happen, how is that proof of anything?
Well, as we know, they had to have Brendan in order to get another search warrant to go back in that property yet again. I don't know how many search warrants they had, but it's a bunch. And another thing that I brought up, it's in one of these tweet replies that I posted, is about the blunt and bloody object that you found. And we've talked about this while you've been away. This was a huge mistake for them to release that to you. Huge mistake.
Yeah.
If anybody had read that, you would have never gotten it. So, how can I want them to explain to all of us what happened to the blunt bloody instrument, as reported, that had to come from Steve Harrington at the crime lab directly to Fassbender to Uyghur for him to put it in his damn affidavit. It had to. So,
and the bones at Cuss Road.
Yep, that too. That's also discussed, and they just brush it away like it's nothing. And
it did fit their narrative of the crime, right?
Right. That's exactly right.
And not only I want to see photographs of this blunt bloody object, since this was discovered the crime lab. I want to see the testing, because if anyone knows to test a blunt bloody object in a missing woman's car, it is a CSI investigation.
That's right.
So I'm sure submitted it for testing. So I want that report, and I want the testing.
There's something else. There's something else that Doc dug up, and I remember reading the queso report, but there's a report where they talk about they found some flesh and some bloody rocks over in Mitchell's quarry. And the dogs had actually, this blood and these bloody rocks and this tissue. And so the they call in Ertl, and this where they found it was up on top of this damn rock pile, 6-8 feet up. So it was this pile of rocks that these dogs sniffed out. 3 of them. It wasn't just one. It was 3 cadaver dogs. Okay, so they're not looking for Teresa. They're just looking for decay, right? So anyway,
Right.
so they call Ertl in. Ertl and them go over and collect it. And then on top of that, they dig down 4 to 6 feet in that rock pile to try to find anything else and sift it and so forth and so on. So anyway, these samples get turned into the crime lab. Now, Ertl wasn't the one that tested it. Now, he is a DNA analyst. Actually, he's got a master's degree, whereas Sherry does not. She's just got the regular degree. But Ertl's not the one to test this stuff. It was Sherry Culhane. And she said it was animal blood, but she absolutely did not test it. There's no test. She called it animal blood tissue. But she didn't test it, so how the fuck does she know?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Yeah, that's she cannot make that determination without
Right.
a test.
That's right. That's exactly right. But she did.
Yeah. Yeah. So, or no, she says she did. But how can you determine
Right.
it's in blood without doing a test to determine it's not human?
That's right.
Right? Because blood is blood on site. Unless you've got the patient or the victim laying there to help you figure out. And even then, you can't say it's for 100% sure because. So, yeah, that is just, there's no innocent explanation for all of these. Why didn't you? And what happened? And that don't make no sense. When that's all we're doing in this case, is the only way to make it make sense is to make excuses for people who have already been caught wrongfully convicting the same man and we're in the midst of being sued for it.
Yep.
So, and it's absolutely disgusting to me.
It really is.
Yeah. I've missed y'all. How is everybody? Everybody good?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Everybody
great.
seems to be. I actually got a couple little things from BB the other day.
Oh, hey.
She didn't really type anything much. It was more thumbs up, and because I typed a couple of questions, and she, it was very brief, but she's still around, so I don't know what's going. I don't know what's going on. We hadn't heard from her in a long time.
She is a fighter. That is one tough chick.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
love to BB.
Yeah. I do miss her. And she had she always had interesting theories and perspectives that really opened my mind up to and that's the greatest thing about our community is we're all just trying to find the truth. And
we're open to listen, whereas the guilters are not. They're closed. They're done.
Yeah. And as long as your truth is your goal, we have some amazing minds trying to figure this case out. And if it can be done, I do not doubt for a second that we could figure it out.
Absolutely.
Because, we've spent many years trying to do it. So I can't believe convicting. Like, are y'all excited as I am about watching this?
Well, it's I hate to give. Well, I don't intend to give anybody any money. I'm gonna get a free trial to this place, and do a little dance with it, and then I'm going to end my trial before they get a penny.
Get your puke buckets ready.
Yep.
I'm not paying for the Pepto-Bismol and any antacids, but. But Christina, I'm not really shocked that it's now sold. And we have to take. I didn't say this, I don't think, the other night, but we have to take this in consideration that Colburn's trial wasn't officially over until about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. So I'm sorry, the talks had to already be in pretty much a done deal for this to come out this quickly, because there's no way that this happened. Just all this shit happened directly after his trial was over. I'm
Wait,
sure.
I didn't. Trial was over. It's over.
Oh yeah, it's done. Colburn's trial is a done deal.
What happened?
He lost.
He lost his ass. Summary judgment was granted.
Yay! All right. Well, there's hope for
Yeah.
that way. So they didn't destroy freedom of the press.
No,
That's good.
Nope.
Judge Ludwig's reply was great.
Fantastic. You should
Yeah.
read it.
It
Oh,
was
yeah.
great.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
well.
he was pretty professional throughout the whole thing, but he did drop his sarcastic remarks in, as only a federal judge can word. I can't remember, but he did. I think he pretty much laid it on the line with him. So
Well, good for him.
Yeah.
Travis is asking, what are the tests to differentiate between human and non-human blood? And then he puts underneath it, ouch, Trelawney. I think that's what's right. It's a
No idea.
yeah.
I know what it is, because Dr. Silkman's told me they're antibody tests that they do that humans have that animals do not. There's some. Don't ask me to tell you what antibodies there are, but they do exist. I can get a better answer from Dr. Silkman for you, Travis.
What's interesting is this, okay, if this is accurate, which Dr. Silkman will know, there is a quick test that can be done on site. Was it available in 2005? I don't know. That would tell you whether it's animal or human, okay? Now, let's say let's build on that. Let's say that test was available and Ertl tested the blood at the site and it tested human or tested animal. He would not have collected it and sent it off.
Or dug 46 feet down.
That's right. So if if that test was an option and he tested it and it came back human and then he sent it off,
if that had came back as Teresa's DNA, that would have blown the case wide open.
Exactly. So how do you 86 it? You bury his testing at the site, and then you have Culhane, if asked, say, oh, it was animal blood, and pretend like it never crossed your desk, I guess.
Yeah. Well, Travis said that Ertl did say that they did a presumptive test. Yeah, what's that? The phenolphthalein test? Is that what it's called, Susan? Rhonda? Everybody? Phenolphthalein that they can test for? Yeah.
Yes.
But to get specific, to differentiate, is an antibody test that they use. I'd have to get Doc to tell you exactly what those antibodies are, because I just don't remember. So, but it's interesting that Culhane made the statement that it was animal blood, but we don't have any kind of testing at all showing that she tested the damn thing.
Do we have pictures?
No. As far as I know, there are no photos. This is items AN and AM and AN. It's in this last night's or yesterday afternoon's reading with the crew.
All right.
I've got the slides. They're in the slides room. There's a link to them to the Google Drive. You can look through and see what Sherry Culhane actually said. So
I will definitely be on the. Yeah.
Anyway, we're 3.5 hours in. I'm going to wrap this one up so we can get out of here. Really appreciate
Yeah.
those that stuck around for
Yeah.
the reading of Kolanczyk. And I don't know if we'll go back into phone calls next week. We might, to kind of break it up so we're not just reading. I know that can be mind numbing, but probably is what I'll do is I'll go back into the phone calls and knock out some more of those and see what we can gather from, November 9th and going into the 10th. There's some really interesting shit that Poggle says and some others. So that's probably what I'll do next week, and then we'll come back at a later date after that and get into Jadowski, his deposition. So hopefully that's a good plan for everybody. And of course, we'll have reading with the crew also next Saturday, and then in between, we got Jeff Jones on Tuesday night. That Doc and I are part of the panel with Cal and Big Jeff and Jeff Jones. And then Thursday, of course, Rhonda, what's coming up for this coming week?
I was just getting ready to jump out. Glad you caught me. We're gonna probably start. I think we're gonna start looking at the police report maybe and picking that apart for Janie Liggins.
Oh boy.
And we have something that we want to share, a music video that we want to share, and then probably use some things from Brian Bates' podcast, because it's just it's just such a complete investigation on his part, and that he shared that with us through his podcast has been a blessing for sure. So we'll probably go through the police report and use things from his podcast to go along with it. So, yep.
Excellent. Okay, looking forward to that. So if you need any help, and of course I'll be there to restream if you want me to Foul Play.
Of course,
And
yeah, we appreciate it.
absolutely. And then of course Wednesdays and Fridays Becca is on with doing the Brendan doing support for Brendan and various things that she does and towards that end. So be sure to watch her. And also want to mention Claire Bear. She's also a big part of the true crime community. She covers a lot of different cases, so give her a listen as well. So unless anybody else has anything, again, thank you to everyone that stuck around. Thanks to our mods that do a fantastic job. And of course to my helpers, the readers, the mods here that help me out. This would be really difficult to do alone, so the interaction is really appreciated. And Sunshine Christine, it's such a wonderful thing that you can come back and have time to jump back in. We really look forward to it.
Great to hear that voice, Christina.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Y'all.
Alrighty. With that said, I'm going to say this has been a Foul Play production.